favorite boys. What's going on, guys?
None. How are you, Mad Max?
I'm good. Ready to rumble. I'm excited for this one.
How was the gym?
It was good. Mondays are my busiest day outside of this, and then we added this on top of this. So Monday is a good day, but it flies by and we're already here.
Well, you're at the because you go into work, right?
Monday's the only day I have to go into the office for work. So
yeah,
and I go to the gym right after that. And by the time I come home and eat dinner and get cleaned up and whatnot, showtime.
Yeah.
Ready to rumble. So, how was your day today?
Good. It's a good day.
Good.
Busy. It's good stuff, buddy.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was a busy.
Robin's racing.
Not crazy day, but enough, right? On a Monday.
Yes, sir. And finally, beautiful weather outside, which is nice.
Oh, buddy, it's so nice, man.
Summertime is way better than the winter.
No, I hate winter, buddy. It's terrible.
Just gonna see. I'm excited for this show. Drew Ellis, longtime racer, long time in the hobby. Team manager for RC America X-Ray. If people don't know, RC America is the North American distributor for X-Ray. So he's the team manager for that team, both on the on-road portion mostly, and then recently in the last year, he's taken over and become the off-road.
As well, eh?
Yes. Just sending him the link here because he said he had issues with the one link. So
that hoodie is that race is this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, so the hoodie race is this weekend at Apex RC Raceway. So Drew will be there. I know Chris Adams will be there from the X-Ray team. A bunch of other local guys. It's a great facility. Can't believe it's already the second race for that series already.
I know. The months will go by so fast by this summer.
Oh, yeah.
It always does, right?
Yeah, at work today, they the month of November got brought up.
Come on.
I swear. Looking that far ahead.
Wow.
So,
Excellent, bro.
Got a couple people in here. What's going on, Chris and Hunter? How you boys doing?
Oh, they weren't there Saturday. Yeah, I missed them.
They weren't there, but we're preparing them a brand new ride for this coming weekend.
Oh,
Have it all taken apart on my table. So they've upgraded to a 2026 car.
Oh, 210s already.
210s. Hunter will debut that. We're going to get him a 25.5, I think, and then 21.5. We're going to rock him into that.
Did Bryce talk to you about Frankie and all the boys coming down Wednesday?
Yep.
Yeah, so they'll be there from 1 in the afternoon till like 10, 11 at night.
Well, you know, some of us got jobs, eh?
No, I'm saying after you're done work, you meathead. Right? That's what I meant.
I don't want to waste too much more time. Tonight we got a racer, a team manager, and a competitor in the house. Team manager for RC America, one of the top racers in the country. We'll dive into his racing, team management, X-ray, and what it takes to compete at the highest level. Let's get started. Everybody, please help me welcome Mr. Drew Ellis.
Is he there? Is he welcoming? He's spinning. Oh, yeah, look at that fella. Look at the glow on him, buddy. Look at the tan. Hey.
Oh. Sun, man. I was doing a little landscaping, a little
landscape
art fixing. So we got a little.
Holy.
Got some sun.
He's got some major. Look at him. He's glowing, buddy. Red. It's awesome.
No.
Super excited.
I see you stole my shirt for tonight.
I did. I figured it would be the right one to wear, So.
Yeah, good idea. How are you, Mr. Drew? How's everything going on?
I'm doing good. Just getting ready to leave to go to round 2 of the Hootie series at Apex. We're heading out, I think, Thursday to go down there. So just kind of getting ready for that and, trying to relax a little bit this summer. But we're at the halfway point of the year. So now there's a lot of things that start working in on the back end. Things start already talking about 27 and team stuff and stuff like that. So we kind of take June as a midpoint, right, of the season of the year to kind of see where we're at and what we need to do and kind of look at the rest of the year from here and then start planning for 27.
Cool.
And the Hoodie series, just because you're talking about planning, how long in advance does this take for people that don't know? Like, when did this idea come up, to when it is now?
Yeah, X-Ray really started doing this. There's a guy over there by the name of, I always call him Matus. It's Matus. And it's kind of been his project that he's took on. He was kind of Mario the oldest is son, right? He's a right-hand man, and he took this series on to do kind of a promotional thing in Europe. So we were trying to see how it would work over here. And so what this was, we actually did one earlier at Islands for an off-road portion. And we were still learning about things. And then as we started to understand what they wanted the series to be, this was our first go at it for on-road. So we did the 4 tracks just to kind of see how it was going to work for us, logistic-wise. Just a few more things, just because it's different than in Europe. They seem to, the tracks in some of the regions are a lot closer together where they're doing these series. And a lot of the tracks, especially in Eastern or Europe, are tracks that are set up in a gymnasium for the weekend, right? So they're not permanent facilities. So we wanted to see how it was going to work and how could we make it a series was the main thing. Just, this kind of happened with the 4 races that we're having now. It was unique because we're actually going to use what you suggested, Max, for the tiebreaker as far as the turnouts go. Because I didn't want to make it 3 out of 4, but the idea is, say like up in your guys' region, the idea for 27 would be to do something at like Rose City and then do something at Kevin's. And then the other track, I always get it pronounced wrong, CTRS or CRTS.
Yeah.
But
CTS.
something like that. And then we've got 3 tracks that could participate in, say, their own series. Right. So, you race 2 out of the 3, and that's kind of your guys' own series, whether we call it, the East Coast Canadian Hootie series, or the same thing goes on for the Ohio fellows, Austintown, NorCal. They could kind of have their own little Hootie series. And so we could try to kind of condense them to do things like that. Or tracks are going to be set up to basically be able to have all 4 events at their track if they want to. But that's what they do in Europe. If you host 4 of these events at your track, that's considered a series, and then they create an overall champion. The problem for us is that our race calendar over here is pretty packed, and a lot of the guys that are hardcore racers like to travel race, and then most of these guys have their own. If you host 4 of these things, that's 1 a month. So, 4 months of your year, you're running 4 Hootie series is at your current track, which you're already hosting other things or other races. So we wanted to try to get it to coexist with a few different tracks in the series. So I'm really trying to work that out. We're speccing the Hootie tires at the event. So we wanted to learn a little bit more about the logistics of that, getting the tires over here, making sure that stuff was on hand, and understanding, what X-ray really wanted from it. So far, Chris's went off really well. It was a good turnout, and it was good racing. EA's is looking to be pretty decent. I think he's at like 100 entries right now. So that's looking good. I'm sure Norcar's is going to be good, and I think Kevin will probably have a packed house for his, being born September. So and then we'll just start looking to see what we're going to do for next year. We could host we could do as many of these as we want. So we're going to be looking around in areas and kind of condense down, I think, to regions and see. But so far, it seems to be fun. It's just a fun race, right? Like, Chris didn't even run tech. If there was a problem, someone said something. It's more of a low-key, kind of chill, relaxed atmosphere in a race. And he did AAAs, which was pretty cool. There was enough time to do that, so there was a little bit more racing. So it worked out well. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like a good event. Obviously, you had some big names there. Hager came over, but a lot of local guys, and it's good because it helps these tracks out. In the summertime when racing's a little bit on the lower end. But we definitely need to get Rose City on that calendar. We'll make that a good one. And I saw a lot of guys asking for 360, so that'd be really cool too.
Yeah. I think your guys' region up there could do really well. So that's what we're gonna look at that, and even if we got to dip into some parts of Ohio for you guys. But the 360, Kevin's track, your guys' track, and CTRS should be a good 4 series race promotion right there for everybody to kind of travel around to that one.
And even Windsor. Remember, Max? Windsor's got their new track that just opened up, right? So they're going to need some help as well. It's a permanent place.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to lean on you guys. I mean, that's what I'm kind of.
Yeah.
We're going to look at that. We just wanted to get through these 4 to understand, one, what was RC America responsible for, and how it would work. I mean, and so far I think it's going to work well, especially if we use it kind of like, the idea for these were to be in the summer months, because everyone's kind of, slowing down in the summer and things like that. But then there's also people itching to race. So we thought this would help some of these tracks during their slow months. EA's in June and NorCar in August. So we thought that would kind of help. And then we got into September for Kevin's at the end of September, just because he was trying to work around some of the other races that already start up. Because, I mean, once we get into, stuff like October-ish, I mean, you just start race after race after race after race pretty much, until April, right? So, and that's hard, unless you get into a really good area that has really good club racing, like, your club racing, you're getting 50 to 60 entries. That would be easy to do like a Hootie Series race and not have to depend on people to travel to it. Yeah. But, you start putting on races that you're dependent on people to travel to for a turnout. You've got to really start looking at when you could do those. And, September, October, November gets packed. Mm-hmm. December gets a little weird. You get into January and things there's 3 big races in January. And then, you get a little bit of a break in February after birds, and it's, carpet gnats, can gnats, and stuff like that. So that's why we were really looking at stuff to go from like, May, June, July, August type of area to run these series, to where hopefully we could get a travel crowd to kind of support them.
Yeah. And just thinking off the dome right now, like you said, we can do different sections. I know the Huddy Series in Europe, like they have different races going on the same weekend. So, Canada alone, we have 5 tracks. You could also make a Canadian USA one, because realistically, like the Texas local guys aren't going to come up here, and not many are going to go down there. So,
right. Well, that's just a region. That's why we called it the North American series. Like we'll probably start to put something down together also in South America as it starts going. I mean, because South America and North America are RC America's regions. So, but you're right. Like it doesn't, we could be doing a race at Rose City on a Saturday, Sunday, and be doing the same Hootie Series the race weekend at EA's track at Apex.
Yeah.
Once we can condense these guys and make it where there's, a group, like you say, I mean, no one's going to, not for a Hootie Series during the summertime, you guys aren't going to, fly down to Dallas, to Fort Worth to come race at Chris's. You guys, I'm hoping that some of you guys I know you were talking about coming to NorCar, mm-hmm. which then that would then compete your guys' series. You go to Kevin's track, you go to NorCar, and you're competing in the series. So it lets everybody get a taste of it. Then next year, I hope we can condense that down, get some tracks that are a little bit closer together in a region and kind of spread some stuff out, some other regions to try to set that up to where, we get a little bit more of a regional crowd moving around and people aren't having to travel from, one end of the U.S. to the other end of Canada,
Yeah. It's a far travel. Do you know, I had a few people ask, I don't know, does NorCar, will they run mod?
They will. So mod is a class. Yeah. Mod is a class. Andy and Wayne they're gonna kind of treat it, because they have their Summer Slam. That's usually, I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks before the Hootie Series, and their Summer Slam is more of a kind of like LMH front wheel drive type of, I don't know if they still do VTA, USGT, but kind of those types of classes. Like they normally don't have like a mod 12 scale mod touring car, or most of the time even like a stock touring car at that race. It's more based off like the race car looking bodies. And so then the Hootie Series for them, they're going to kind of keep that more as a race. Mm-hmm. So from what I'm getting, they're going to have mod TC, super stock TC, LMH, and so on for that. I think EA is like having 10 classes this week at his event. And then me see here. I got it right here. They're going to have stock TC, super stock TC, mod TC, LMH 12 scale, super stock 12 scale, GT12, World GTR, and F1 is what Norcar is going to run their Hootie series. So they're going to, and the idea is, I know you guys, the class thing, it always comes up. But, for me, is there a lot of classes? We do have a lot of classes, but, I think the bigger picture that we got to look at is reality is just get out and race.
Mm-hmm.
If there's 20 classes, that means there's a class for you to show up to these events and race.
Yeah.
And so that's my, and that's why it's gone that way. Back when Chuck Mackin and them started Indoor Champs, there's like 2 classes and they had 500 people showing up to run 2 classes,
And that's how it was, Drew, back then, right?
Yeah. Even for me,
I went to watch an 86 and there was a Z main and 12 scale stock, Z2 or something like that. It was incredible.
My first champs was 04.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one touring car, just stock touring car, we were running TC3, foam touring car, 27 turn brushed. And I'm pretty sure, dude, it went to like an I main.
Yeah.
It was insane, So obviously we don't have the piece of the pie isn't that big anymore, right? And so what we've done to try to entice people or get people to come to these travel races is we've got to stay on top of the premier classes, right? And then we also got to start on the new and up and coming classes.
Yeah.
That people are interested at club levels, you look at World GTR and you're like, man, there's not a track by me that races that at all. But you go somewhere to like CRC in Rome, New York, and there's 50 dudes up there racing it.
Yeah.
So, so it just gets to that point where I've always told guys like, hey man, get out and race, like pick a class. There's plenty of them to do it. There's different speeds, different bodies, different cars, and come race. And I think as we've gotten to that point, right, because we all know what would happen if we condense these classes.
Oh, that's what Paul said. Remember, he told me on the phone, Mark, you be the first one. You make it Canadian National, you only make 7 classes, and then the U.S. champs will follow suit after. We'll see what happens to you. I said, we'll be closed. And that's when he started.
Yeah, it's not going to, people want to run what they want to run.
Yes.
And each area and each club track has their different, classes, their different structures. I mean, dude, there's, I will say now, man, when I was coming up running, there was foam tire touring car carpet racing was tough to prepare for. Because we go to these big races, dude, on brand new carpet, and there would just be massive amounts of traction. You just couldn't. I mean, we used to spray the track, but you could never. There was no one running mod at a club level back in the foam tire days. Like it wasn't happening. You'd go somewhere, maybe you test and prep, but it was very low. Like nowadays, I'm pretty surprised. Like Chris gets a pretty decent club turnout to run mod touring car. And like there's other guys at clubs where mod touring car is starting to pick up. And I think maybe part of it is people don't want to mess with the motor wars or the battery wars, and the cars are just, plug and play at this point, right? And mod. But it seems like it's being club raced a little bit more than when I came up, at least. And I think it's just because of the ease of the plug and play. Like you could buy for modified touring car, if you've got the talent, you could shop anywhere you want to and buy any product you want and show up and make the main. If you have the talent, it's not like now you got to, I don't have this, or this guy needed to give me that, or this motor wasn't built right. It's not that point anymore. It's gotten a little bit like that in stock, but it's always been that. I mean, if you weren't back in the day, if you weren't getting handed the right battery pack, you weren't. I mean, I remember I ran for SMC for years.
Yeah.
And it was when Danny used to come over to the States still, and he'd just wait. That he'd have these 3 or 4 packs that were just phenomenal, and he's waiting to see which one of his stock guys is
going to get
fastest. Like who's going fast with the slow stuff. And then that's when all of a sudden you get handed this pack and you're like, oh man, that's quite a bit of a difference. So, and those days aren't really that, now it's just money. You could buy 100 packs and find you that one that's a phenomenal battery. So, but yeah, I think it's, the class thing, like you guys, I've heard you talk about it. It's definitely a hot topic, but I don't
because
know
all
if,
we're saying is for club racing is just sometimes you feel, and I understand there's some guys that always tell us, Drew, that they don't want to, like, say they have like 4 RC cars, but their favorite class is one. Well, they won't go to that one track or go race because they don't offer that class. I said, but you got 3 other cars. Run one of the other ones you have. Yeah, but my favorite class is that class. So if I can't run it, I'm not going. And then what do you do at a club? You owned a track before, and again, it's not my track; it's Mike's. But what do you? Where's there a limit to your thoughts on how many to have a? You know what I mean? I know it adds time to the day, and Mike's hardcore on time, but it's like, do you run when there's only 2 cars of that class?
I mean, my cutoff was always 3. It takes 3 to make a class. Yeah, it makes 3. I mean, because here's the deal, dude. At the end of the day,
after, right?
Yeah,
That's his big one.
It just, people have to understand how that works out. People might have to lend a hand. I mean, club racing, if you got 3 people out there on the track to marshal, that should cover most of the area. I mean, this is club racing. We're not handing out a world championship after, Saturday night. But I always did that. But I mean, I was always a big, man, I mean, the main thing is you got to keep the lights on.
Yep.
At the end of the day, that's the goal, right? And I don't think any track in the country is set up right now to turn down an entry. It's just not. Like, any entry you could get, anything that you could get, it's all, am I for it? Like, do I like the class? Maybe not. But you know what? If 3 dudes want to show up and run, I had a family here in St. Louis, the Corleys, and they're a big family, dude. I mean, it's probably all together, there's probably 7 of them that would race, and they would show up hit or miss. Well, they all liked running World GT. And so they would set up the days that come up there where, I know the one brother, James, that kind of keeps all this stuff together. He'd show up with, 6 cars. And then here comes his 2 brothers walking in, and then their daughter and her boyfriend. And next thing you know, they ran World GT as just, it was their class.
Yeah.
And yeah, it adds time to the day for racing. But, man, I mean, if you can't, I don't know, like I saw Max, you made the comment of like big racing, you go out, you do what you do, 3-4 hours later, you're at home. But I mean, I don't know if you could run a type of, like, why would you want to come, to the big thing that I've always the track time is not the problem at club racing for me. The time is lost giving the people enough time to get their stuff prepped. Right. So number one, if you're not turning out enough heats, let's just say an average track on an average club race day, you'd be lucky if they have 10 heats of something. You know what I'm saying? And so 10 heats, dude, running through, that should be enough time as long as you don't got, most of these guys are trying to run 2 classes.
Well, that's what happened, right?
They gotta have a prep, right? They gotta have a time to work on their car, make changes or stuff like that. So you end up, we at my track, man, we ran a pretty tight shift, and we ran on Saturday, and basically the doors opened at 9 and they didn't close till 10 at night. And we ran on-road and an off-road program. So from like 9 to 3 was the on-road portion of the pro level Saturday club race. Mm-hmm. And then there would be an hour, 4 o'clock. The off-road track would get set up on the on-road track, and the off-road guys would start racing, and we'd start racing, 2 hours of open practice and go right into racing and running through them. And we did that on a Saturday, and guys loved it. And I had some guys, dude, that stayed the whole day.
Did both,
stayed and did off-road and on-road, but then it also gave each guy a different breakdown of and you got to think too, this is during the winter time, man. There's nothing to do outside. What are you going to do on Saturday? Summertime, of course, nobody wants to be inside the track all day Saturday, but it can be done depending on what your guys' turnouts. I mean, if you guys are getting big enough turnouts up there that you're time consuming on a Saturday and worried about being there all day, well, kudos to you guys, because that's, you got to turn your club race into a 2-day event. You're doing really well, man. That means you need to open another track like 40 minutes from there or something. But I mean, just on average, that's just, it's a tough thing. But Yeah, man. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? Is time for the hobby. I mean, the store that I've ran for a while we had a lot of guys come into the Chesterfield track, the last track I had. And we were in a really high dollar area. And so we went from a very low dollar area from the track before that to a high dollar area. And I could tell you the difference was in the low dollar area, the people had the time, but they didn't have the money. In the high dollar area, the people had the money, but didn't have the time. So it was almost the same thing. Like I sold more product. I sold, man, there's probably 15 guys that I sold like full blown equipment to, race equipment, and maybe came out once. And it's just that time commitment. And that's what I think new people underestimate, right? Because guy comes up, he buys the equipment, says he gets into, a base class, whether, we were really doing a lot of US GT, GT12, kind of getting guys into it. And they do everything, they get everything, but then it was like, they'd come out, they'd break parts, couldn't go down the straightaway straight, just all kinds of things to get used to it. And it's like, well, what do you need to do? And I'm like, we open up Tuesday night for practice. You need to come back Tuesday night. Like now the investment is your time. What do you have is what you're going to get out of it. If you can't put, just like anything, if you're only going to put 1 day a week into this, that's what you're going to get back out of it. Either you're going to be a natural right from the get-go, which those are very rare, right? That we see this natural talent to where the guy's like, I've never held a radio, and you hand him a radio and he's hot lapping around the track, versus a guy that's actually has to go in and put in a large amount of work, which is like anything. If I want to get good at golf, I've got to go golf. If I want to get good at sports, I've got to, my kid plays very high level soccer. He trains 6 days a week, so these types of things. And so that's when a person realizes, well, I have the money to do all this and I really like it. But for me to get even partially decent at this, I've got to invest so much time that I don't want to put the time into it. So that's always been a tough thing, but that's also why that leads into why we have, 20 classes to choose from in a nationwide scale of classes.
Yeah,
So,
the comment you're referring to is the one on our Canadian. People don't know. We're talking about qualifying format and time. So when I had my store at the track, that was a big issue. People would come in, they would, want to start the hobby. They see stuff like, okay, when do you guys race? Okay, Saturday, doors open at 7, race starts 9:30. We're usually here till 5:30. Scared the shit out of them, right? Because now every Saturday they're sitting here. And the problem is like people who race, most of the time we're just sitting there twiddling our thumbs because other racing is going on.
right.
It's hard for people. The full scale I bring up, one night we start racing at 7, we're done by 10. We get 2 practice laps, you got an 8-lap feature and then a 20-lap main, and that's it, done. A lot faster. 5 classes.
Yeah, a lot faster and probably about the same amount of money at the end of the day. With a lot of that, I mean, we've, that's the other thing that comes in, is the commitment that you want to do. But, that's the same thing is like, driving a real car, we all do it, coming and doing an RC car. If you've never done it, it's something you really have to learn. It goes back, it's just, it's like everything. I think that's why a lot of these guys that have slot car tracks, they do really well because really anyone could do that and pick it up pretty quick. It just comes down to reaction time if you're fast, or maybe what you're doing on your build, or most of these classes do breakouts. So I mean, everyone could do that. So that's always a good way to get people in. But we used to have cars that we'd let people run, and so they'd come in, and it blows my mind. I'd played with RC cars from when I was younger, never really raced. I didn't start racing until my uncle Larry got me into it. And I was I don't want to say I didn't break stuff, but I understood the concept and I understood what needed to do, like to go fast. And but I've seen guys come in our track that, they don't even know their left from their right with the radio system. And so, trying to, once they do that, they look at it and they're like, oh, this is super cool. I got to get into this. And then you're like, well, here's a radio, go up and make some laps. And you've got them at like 30% throttle in point, where I would set the radios up to where they just hold the trigger wide open. And I can't tell, dude, 60% of the people that tried it couldn't do it at that speed. So it wasn't, you're really looking for, the thing, the science behind this is to find out the person we're looking for, because all three of us have things that are in common, right? And we all like racing RC cars. So there's a competitive drive that has to come into this, right? And there's also an enjoyment of racing that has to come into this. There's not one person that stopped into my shop, right? I had 2 tracks in malls. There's not one person that ever came in and said, "Oh, this looks stupid." Everyone comes in and like, "Dude, what is this? This is awesome. These things are super cool." But then it's another thing to do that, because then they get an idea of watching someone like, you watch someone like Kevin Bear run around the track for your first time, and it looks really cool. You're like, "Oh, that looks cool, dude. I can't wait to try this." And then you go up there and try it, and it's like, "Oh, wow, that guy is really good." It's kind of one of those things. So that was always funny to see at the last mall too, because we were in a ran down mall, but like I said, the area, there's a Lamborghini dealership down the street. It's where all the ball players and hockey players live in St. Louis. So it was a high dollar area. So we got to see a lot of interesting people come in there. And I remember one time being Ben Wallace, phenomenal basketball player, right? The guy is top grade basketball player. And I met him at one of the early races down in Kissimmee. Super nice dude. He was running an X-Ray NT1 at the time. And this was before he started Wallace Motorsports and all this stuff. And so I rebuilt his NT1 for him, everything. It was kind of helping him in the pits, and he's driving. Gave me a basketball all signed. Super nice dude. But I remember having a comment with him, and he's like, "Well, Drew, this and that." And I said, "Well, it ain't basketball, Ben." And so, like, so that dude puts me on the basketball court, I'm going to look, like I don't know what I'm doing, but, it's a whole nother world. And he's super athletic. He obviously has, all the skills you would think, but it really comes down to, Ralph, me coming up and being around Ralph, and he was a natural talent. Like, there's dudes that don't need to go to the track, and they cannot touch a radio for 6 months, and they show up and they're on TQ pace. And Ralph was one of those guys. He was and he had down in Texas, obviously, he was a king. Everyone knew who Ralphie was. And he would help some of these guys. They would, "Hey, come out and help my son, come out and do this." And, Ralph would go out and see this. And then, there's that one thing and a driver, that's been able to get to somewhat of a top level in this hobby that you can't teach, right? They have this ability, and then the rest of it's work rate, right? Like, yep. Lemieux was super talented, right? But I'm going to tell you right now, Lemieux worked everyone under the table. Yep. At races. He outworked everyone. Like, just when he was at his local track to when he was at the big races, he outworked everyone. And so there's that. So when you match talent and that work rate, but there's some guys, like I remember Ralph taking 6 months off and then showing up at a nitro race and TQing and winning the thing, just like, and so some of these guys, you do it so long, it's one of those things, but yeah, that's the toughest thing. I think Mike Reedy always used to say something like, talent in a can is on sale in the hobby shop right now, or we ran out of the talent in the can. That's the biggest thing. And when you get a group of guys that realize that they need to put in work to achieve that, it's not something that I need to buy. It's not a motor I need. Like you guys said, you switched motors and speedos, and the guy didn't. It's about none of that. It's about a feel. It's about a feel, man. And my dad does construction and like remodeling construction. And so when we built the first track, we were doing the subfloor, and he's like, "What needs to be done?" I'm like, "Just needs to be as smooth as a pool table, Dad. It just needs to be flat." And he's like, "All right, okay, I got this." And so we got the carpet laid down, and I'm running around. I tell him, I'm like, "Hey, I could feel a bump out there." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean you could feel a bump?" And I'm like, "I could feel a bump." And he's like, "It's impossible. Is your radio vibrating? Like, how do you feel the bump?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a visual, right, from my eye, and my hand. It's an eye and hand coordination that I could feel with my hand. The car gets upset there, and I could see it with my eyes, and I registrate to where it almost is like I feel it. But that's not, my dad just, he's one of those guys that doesn't know his right from left driving an RC car around the track. But he's just like, he's like, that's impossible. And I'm like, well, that could be the slight difference in a person that has that feel and knows what a fast car. That's the other thing too, is knowing what a fast car feels like. You look at all these fast guys and they're chasing setups. Well, they're chasing that setup from that one big win they had when the car felt that way.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get that car back to that feel. So it's very important that you had a car that is fast, and what does that feel like to drive fast, right? Because that's when guys hand me the controllers at the track, 9 times out of 10 I go faster than they do. And they look at me and they're like, well, what's different? I'm like, just the idiot holding the controller, bro. That is pretty much the only difference is the idiot holding the controller. And so when Andrew started racing, and I got to kind of see a lot of this again with Andrew starting to race, because I started back when he was born. So I think my first big race was 2003 Carpet Nats. And I started back when he was younger, and I don't really remember that, but being able to see him start up and him running and learning. So I would tell him he started with like a T421. We were already running X4s at the time. And I was like, look, this thing's good. And so I would run it, and I would tell him, like, we're not changing anything until you get within 0.2 of me. And you're just going to drive the car. You're going to learn how to continue to keep up the camber, the droop, the ride height, these simple things of maintenance, right? And then you're going to go out and try to figure out, how am I driving the car this fast? Mm-hmm. And it focused on that. I had another guy, Steve Smith, that did it. And Steve Smith's an old school racer. He actually was one of the guys that kind of helped design the whole camber gauge system that we use now back in the day for a company called Race Tech. But he came back, started racing, and he realized, he's like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to copy Drew. And this was, back 18, 19, 20, 20, right around there somewhere in 21. He's like, I'm just going to follow Drew with whatever he does to his car. And I'm not even going to let anything creep into my mind that I need to do something different. I'm just going to do whatever Drew's doing, and I'm going to try to drive the car like him. And it took him about a full summer session to get to where he was fast with the car, But then we went to a big race, and I remember the first big race we went to, and he did well, but he could have done better. We went to the Coastals Nationals, which I think was the 2020, or maybe it was right after COVID. I think it was right after COVID, 2021. It was still when the whole COVID thing was going on. We went to Coastal, and he came up there, and he was a little off pace during some of the practice and the first qualifying. He comes over, and he's like, Drew, what did you change? And I'm like, I haven't changed anything. And I was sitting like second or third on the grid in super stock at that point. But then he starts hearing, you get at that team table, you start hearing everybody start tuning their cars, and you're like, this guy's got this shock package, Drew, this, that. And now he's changed everything, it got away from the program and changed everything. And he ended up going back to the original setup and ended up going faster. So, that's, I guess, a little bit of a mental side of how you got to be prepared at some of these big races, is to understand what your program is, and then what do you need to do, and never be too crazy to wholesale stuff, but stick to your program, stick to what and figure out where the speed in the car is for you. That's what I always tell a lot of our team guys, is that, work on the car setup to find the speed, because there's going to be speed in the car. That's a setup change, right? That we make, that we're like, you don't even have to say it's better. The lap times tell you it's better, right? But then there's going to be other things that you change that you feel are better, but the lap time isn't faster, right? So that's going to be a preference for a driver preference versus where the speed is. Say if I make a change and find speed with it, my teammate should be able to make that same change and find speed with it. That's how I've always looked at it. There's other things that if I don't find speed, but I'm like, oh, I like how this car feels to me now. It feels faster, even though I'm the same speed. That's like a driver preference change. So I always tell these guys, especially since we've gone to the new platform, that you've got to find what actually makes the speed in the car versus what's going to make the car drive different. Because just because it drives different doesn't mean it's going to be faster or slower. It's just going to have a slightly different feel. So I've always kind of talked to that with the team guys, especially going to the newer platform that we're on. Because, I mean, we were so on the old ARM platform for so long. I mean, the 2021 was such a good car, and we really knew what we were doing with it. And then we went right into this whole different X4 with a different type of arm shape. And it was a big learning curve. The car drove quite a bit different. So I remember telling the guys when we got the prototypes just to like spend the next 2 weeks or month. I remember telling Kevin, like, just drive the car. Like, don't make any setup changes. Just drive the car, see how it drives, see if he could go faster. And then we could start finding out where the speed in the car was. And I thought we had pretty decent success with that whole thing. But that was one of the main things that I always talked about early on with that stuff was we got to find out where the speed's at.
Well, a lot of good info there.
Yeah.
I know Jimmy. It's funny you mentioned the feel stuff because Jimmy obviously races RC and he's a good driver. He's not shit. But he also raced high level real cars for a long time. 360 sprint cars and whatnot. He always says that racing an RC car is way harder than a real car. In terms of the feel.
You don't do it every day, right? I mean, we're all driving cars when we're 16, learning how to drive. Unless is they let you guys start driving at 12 up there in Canada, or is that
no.
Is that different? No,
16.
So I mean, we all start driving. I mean, especially if you're a fella, you can't wait till you're 16 to start driving. So that all happens pretty quick, right? And the feel, I think it comes down to the feel of what you're able to feel from Nicky Lauder always talked about how he had such a good ass because he could feel the car. His ass would be able to tell him what the car was doing on the track. And so you have to have that feel where in RC, it's a visual plus input to the car to where you can feel like, all right, well, I'm having to give it a little bit more steering here. I'm having to give it a little less steering there. Like I could, some of these tracks back in the day, especially when we were running foam tires, like I could tell you if the turn was off camber a little bit. Like you could feel the track wasn't flat there, it was off camber, or like somebody be like the car's doing something weird there. Well, that's there's something going on, and that's that input that you're able to pick up and then feel that setup change. It all comes down to your eye and hand coordination.
But you're right about the feel. You're right about the feel in the RC. Like I used to have the car, it have to feel heavy. And I remember my mechanic, to Steve, that would travel with me, goes, "What the hell?" I said, "I can't drive a car when it feels like a spider, like it feels it's floating on top of the track. I don't care about the lap time. I cannot drive a car." He goes, "You gotta feel it roll." Yes, I got to feel it. It's got to be feeling like it's in the track. If it's floating on top, I could feel it. He didn't understand it. He never drove. He was just a great mechanic. I would just tell him this is what I need. But he was also, like you talk about, Drew, he was that good of a mechanic that sometimes he know it's in my head. And he would say, made some changes for the main. We'd run the main. We'd win. And I said, "Oh, my God." On the way home, it would be like, "Oh, my God, what'd you change? The car was perfect." He goes, "I didn't change fuck all." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "No, it was in your head. The car was perfect. You were driving great. I was new in your head. So I just told you I made changes so you'd shut up, right? Yeah. I didn't have to change nothing. But in your head, you said in the main, you gave me the thumbs up after 2 warm-up laps. I'm laughing. I go,
best car you ever drove. Best car you ever drove.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've done that a couple times, as you guys know, or you might not know. I was Ralph Birch's mechanic probably for 8 years, and we won a world championship together in 2010 in Houston. And I did a lot of testing with him, and Ralph was really good at. He had mechanics his whole life. I mean, he was a good mechanic also on his own, good driver, great driver, all this stuff, but he was really good at being able to tell you what the car was doing.
What he needed?
Yeah. What he needed, what it wasn't doing. Like he was his that's, because he had learned that having a mechanic. I think that's a great thing. When you have a mechanic, a driver learns how to communicate. Because that's some of the toughest things right now is some drivers that are really good. They don't know how to communicate what they need or what they don't need. Well, or what is the car doing, or and that's a tough thing. But having a mechanic, you're forced to have this communication.
Yeah.
to come back and give this, just like in real racing, you're needing to give your pit guy feedback of what the car is doing and what you think it needs,
and what he sees, right?
What he sees, and then what he knows from his side. So I mean, there was several times that I would do some type of change that Ralph wouldn't know, or Ralph was maybe prejudiced against, being like, oh, that never works. I don't like the way that makes the car feel. And I would just make this change without him knowing. And, he'd come up like, man, the car was great that time, and so, but there was some times that he was like, hey, something's wrong with the car. And I'd play it off like, well, what do you mean? The car's exactly the same as it was the last time. Just, you need to drive better. But, that happens sometimes. And we've done that in off-road too, because some of these guys that are super talented, and I've worked with several of them, right? I mean, I've been around Ralphie, been around Paulie, Swagger. I've been able to, for the little bit that I've been in the hobby, I got into it, like I said, maybe late 2002, because Andrew was born. And I went to my first nationals in 2003, and I qualified 5th. No sponsors, nobody, just went up there to a track I've never been at, been racing maybe for 6 months, and qualified 5th in the AMA. And so after that, then it got really hardcore. I got sponsored, I think, by X-Ray by 2004. Okay. Because they asked me at that race, Ralph came up to me, he's like, well, hey, we'd like to help you. And I kind of laughed about it all. Just be like, what do you mean, man? Like, you sponsor people? Like, I'm trying to stay out of trouble. We're hanging out at club tracks, drinking beer, playing with toy cars, like, I had no clue. I was driving an 88 Monte Carlo at the time to these
nice,
going to these races, and like I had no idea. And then I got into it more. But then I've been with X-Ray since 2004. And
wait a minute, 88 Monte Carlo. I want to know what kind of dubs were you rolling back then?
No, man, it was all factory.
Come on, you're from St. Louis. You had.
I had. I'll show you the picture. I did have a 95 Impala. Super Sport that was on some 20-inch Momos for a while. I'll have to show you guys the picture next time I see you, but I had that in my younger days.
But when you're talking about setups and all that, it was like running with Martin Crisp and learning so much from him. And he used to tell me when his talent was more of the mechanical side with Martin. He could drive, but the stuff, and he always said that when he found out I was using my droop screws for tweak, he couldn't believe it. And he goes, you beat me and you're using your droop screws for tweak? I said, what else is it for? It goes, it's for droop, you idiot. But right. He had the talent of watching your car go around, and you would ask him something and he'd say, okay, make this, and this change. I said, you told me only one change at a time. He goes, no, make this, and this. He was that talented, Martin.
Oh, I've been at races with Martin, and he's making changes on the warm-up laps. Like, adjusting. I remember we were at Snowbirds one year, and we're going to the last qualifier, and we're up on the stand, and something, he just off the stand now, adjusting camber on the track, dude, making a quick change or something. I think Martin, the little bit that I was around him, you get these racers that he had a very good aspect of like the engineering behind the car and the aspects of how things in theory work, right? Yeah,
it was incredible.
But sometimes you get around some of these guys that are racing and they don't even, understand those concepts of engineers. And most of the time, in real racing, F1, half the time the racer's arguing with the engineer. It's like the engineer's trying to tell the racer how to drive and the racer's trying to tell the engineer how to design the car. So it's that back and forth. But Martin did have a really good understanding of one, how to get a car to work properly and drive properly, but then had a visual aspect also to look at it. And he ran for X-Ray for a few years, and he was definitely influential, especially with like Andrew Hardman and those kids coming up.
Oh, yeah.
That you guys had a hardcore group, Bryce and them at that younger age of kids that really had a good understanding of what went on. A lot of it went from his Triple X main book for sure.
Yeah, and that's when he took Bryce under his wing when Bryce started racing a little bit more, and then he would come down here. He spent a lot of time with Bryce, and it was really cool. He taught Bryce how to push brake. I don't know what the hell he was even talking about. He goes, treat it like a real car. I'm going to teach you how to push brake. And it was funny. Wilson brought that up today at the shop. He goes, and Martin was actually nice when he was here. So Bryce was, 15, 16, 17 at the time. So at club racing, he'd be, he'd battle with them and play with them. But we knew when Martin was going to a big race because just before the club, that last club race before, he'd lap everybody. Yeah. Getting ready for the race. But he taught so much to the guys around here and all that. But He
No,
likes
he was
the young guys.
he was a great dude for the sport, for the industry, for sure, man. I mean, that
Yeah, I used to tell some guys they felt he was intimidating. They felt whatever, and I remember telling guys, just go ask him, right?
Yeah.
Go over there and ask him, right? Martin.
I think a lot of people get intimidated. I tell you what, man.
Yeah.
Paula Mew's ex-wife. We were at a race, dude, and I mean, this was, Paulie was the man. This was when Paulie was the man.
You're gonna say it, right, Max? Go ahead, my man.
And I felt like, dude, I felt like I was the man too, because I was hanging out with Paul. We'd walk in, we'd traveled all over the country. We'd walk into hobby shops. People would know who they'd be like, oh my God, that's Drew Ellis and Paul Lemieux, right? But then Elise, that's Paulie's, that's Chase's mom.
Yeah.
She was sitting at this race. And it was a Novak race that we were in Wisconsin. And I think we went out to dinner that night. She was laughing and said something like, she's like, you guys really think you're the shit. and so, of course I'd run my mouth, and she's like, you're the lowest form of celebrities. And I'm like, what? And then I'm like, she goes, you go in that hobby shop, everybody's like, oh, it's Drew, it's Paul. But then you go in the McDonald's across the street, nobody knows you. And I was like, that dude, she told me this, this was 18 years ago. And I still carry that, thinking like,
it still hurt, man.
It did. I was like, man, she hit me right to the phone on this one. We're the lowest, but it's some of that, guys all the time are like, oh, I don't want to come up and bother you. I didn't want to do this. And it's like, look, we try to do a really good deal. And I always try to tell our guys that we're going to be approachable. And that's what makes a good team and a good driver. Someone like Alex Hagberg, he's super approachable,
Amazing.
And that for a company, sometimes that in the day and age we are now, right? Back when Joel Johnson and those guys were ruling the roost, it was, hey, what wins on Sunday sells on Monday.
Yep.
It's not the case no more, man. The public has gotten smarter, and they realize that guys like Hagberg, Bruno, they could drive a shoebox with wheels on it.
Yep.
They've gotten to that point where they understand. So I always say with X-Ray and RC America, it's what comes outside the box. Like, you're going to buy this kit, you're going to buy this stuff, but what are you going to get outside of the box? Like, what information are you going to be able to get? You're able to talk to Alex Hagberg on Facebook Messenger or email, or he's responding to questions. It's like being approachable at that level is huge. And the more that we could spread that to these people that feel intimidated, because it is a big deal. You either show up and you look at these guys like they're a bunch of nerds and you have no idea who they are, or you show up intimidating, being like, look, man, these guys are the real deal. This is the hobbyist sport I love. And these are the guys that are at the top of it. Stuff like that. Or you show up, you don't know, like my first race, dude, I showed up and didn't know anybody. I didn't know who Barry Baker was. I didn't know any of these dudes. I knew a couple guys at this track. I traveled with this dude named Mo Denton, and we went up to Minneapolis, my first nationals. And I was wearing white T-shirts with black Adidas shoes, sagging pants with a big gold chain at these things. First when I showed up, I just had no clue, no clue what to expect. And
your DC hat, straight brim.
Yeah, my DC and crew hats and the flat bills. Like, these guys are looking at me, but then I'm looking at them like, there's a bunch of nerds. And I remember I knew Sean Cochran at the time, and Sean was Mike Reedy's predecessor, right? He was the guy that basically took over after Mike Reedy, and I knew him from being in the area that I came up racing.
Okay.
Down in Carbondale. And so I was over talking with Sean. Well, I didn't know who any of these dudes were. Blackstock, Barry at the time, no idea. Well, I remember I was looking at Barry's car, and I picked it up and didn't ask to pick it up. I just picked it up and looking at it, and I'm kind of twisting the chassis, talking to Sean. Well, Sean's looking at me like I'm crazy. And then here comes Barry walking up. He's Barry, of course, back then Barry was the fabulous one, right?
Yeah, Barry
Huntington Beach at its finest. And so he's looking at me, and I look at him, and I'm like, dude, who are you, bro? And it was like, I didn't. And then my buddy Mo, of course, knew all these guys, and like Mo gets me, he's like, come on, Drew, let's go. He's like, dude, that was Barry Baker's car that we were just twisting and finger banging out, and all this stuff. He's like, that's the top associated driver over there. And I'm like, great, like, that's good. So it goes two ways, right? Either you show up and you don't have a clue who these dudes are, or you show up and you're intimidated because you do know who they are.
Yeah.
So, I always tell guys that, being approachable is part of the hobby, and learning how to do that is a bigger aspect, because that's, all these companies, I mean, everybody wants to win. I don't think there's a company, Schumacher, Awesomatics, X-Ray, whatever, Kyosho, Mugen, the list goes on and on. All those companies want to win, right? There's no doubt about that. But there is one thing that a good majority of them want to do, and they want to sell product. And so that's how we have to learn first and foremost, is how to showcase the product that we're sponsored by, or that the companies you run for. How do we showcase that? And so, of course, you want to be as approachable. If you're not approachable and people don't want to come talk to you, well, then, and nowadays, just winning races isn't enough anymore.
No.
It's just not that type of deal. Like, you've got to be approachable. I mean, these guys, like, you've got to do so much more. And I tell you, Lemieux was also the king of that, man. I remember being at races with him early on when X-Ray, and we'd be there, and he would have a line. I mean, 6 dudes basically waiting to talk to him with their cars. And they would have, one guy would maybe have an X-Ray, one guy would have an Associated, one guy would have, a Schumacher. And Paul would take the time to look at these dudes' cars, check the droop, check the tweak, check the ride height, all the time, man. And that really then, that was a big thing early on. What RC America was really built on was that type of support from the drivers, that you knew you could come over and you didn't even have to run an X-Ray car, and we were going to sit there and kind of help you and make sure that you were having a good time at the race, in the hope and the return that, Paul we would feel is that, when this guy goes to the hobby shop to buy his next car, and as X-Ray becomes more popular, then, he's going to choose it. Because, dude, I could tell you I started racing with X-Ray in 2004, man, and at that time, Losi and Associated were ruling our market. Like, they had the big race teams. They had the whole US market already. And those guys used to laugh at us about the X-Ray cars, about the chassis looking like Swiss cheese, or, would walk by and laugh at us and be like, oh, you'll never sell a $500 touring car. Like, it just, because that wasn't back then, that wasn't a thing in 04, 05, $500 touring cars. That was like top tier stuff. And they used to laugh at us about all that stuff. And man, we just dug in, dude. And the company grew, and the team grew with it. And the car, the family, Hirai, Martin, are so passionate about racing, which is no different than how the Losis and the Hustings were, right? That built Associated and Losi. They were passionate about racing. And that's what it comes down to. When you have a group like that, especially Hirai, as determined as he was, he came to one of his first champs, I want to say it was maybe 2004. And he got all the team guys that we had there at the time, and told all the team guys, he didn't speak very good English at the time, but he told everybody that if you break a part, he wants it. So he's like, if you break a part, it's on the track, go collect it. Bring me the parts that break. And he was wanting all the parts to break. And I remember Ralph sitting there. It's like, well, what do you, ain't no way Ralph Birch is going to walk a track to pick up a broken part. And he's just like, what do you want? What do you want a broken part for here? Here I was like, we're going to figure out how to make them not break. And I remember Ralph, and he came back and he's like, well, what are we going to sell if you do that? Was the one thing. Like, well, wait a minute. But that was Hirai's mindset, was that he was going to not only make the car, the performance side of things, but the material side of things, the understanding of that, the easy ability of working on the car. Those were all concepts that went into helping design the car around that. And so some changes got to where the car was easier to work on. Some changes got to where the car was more durable, but didn't lose the performance side of things, So there was a lot of cool things that went back on in those early days. And plus that was, I don't want to say it was on-road's heyday, but it was definitely touring cars' heyday. I mean, my first champs, there was 600 entries, dude. I mean, they would run, we would show up and you would get 2 practices a day. So basically you would run 2 practices on Wednesday, 2 practices on Thursday. Okay. And then that's it. You're in your heat. That's your practice run. You're done now. And then Friday we'd start qualifying, where you would go in and do this same thing. And man, I remember those guys would start running at like 7 in the morning, and 12 scale mile would be on the track at like 3 in the morning. So like it was this super long day because there were so many people, and then also it was such a huge 12 scale race that you had all these 12 scales, but it was a massive amount of time with very little track time. And that was that was the appeal of that race, because here's the deal. Mr. Bill was the guy that ran that when I started racing. And you show up, if you've never been there, you would be at the bottom of the pile. Okay. And let's say you beat yourself out of that bottom of the pile and you made the B main that year. You sign up next year, guess what? You start in the B qualifier.
Yeah.
So as soon as you would make the A, you were guaranteed A qualifiers and A practices the next year. So it made you want to, once you got there, it's like, well, I gotta go to champs because I'm in the A sort right now. Yeah. And you knew that you were going to get really good practice with the fast guys. Your qualifying was going to be really clean. I mean, it didn't matter if you were Barry Baker. If you missed one champs, you went back to the bottom of the pile. So, I mean, that's how it was. It was really interesting that he did that like that. And it really made people come back. But it was a long day when we were in our hotel, and it was a full blown, I always joke about it. It's like, hey, we're getting ready to go race, and we're going to do a 12 to 14 hour track day. And that's what I think they turn out to be. Sometimes longer when they're test sessions, but it's a 9 to 9 if you're lucky, or sometimes it's a 7 to 12. So, but that's where it was. And Cleveland also inspired, you run 3 classes. Like everybody at champs would run 3 classes because you had time. You could run 2 touring car classes in a 12 scale. I mean, they said back then too, that was touring car saved 12 scale. And the reason 12 scale was starting to die off as touring car was picked up, but then we'd start going to these races and all the touring car guys would get a 12 scale because they had nothing to do.
Yeah.
So then you'd run 12 scale just to get more track time at that point, was the whole base off of it, because you were limited. Like, a lot of these races we go to now have that open practice. Well, back then the races were so big that it just wasn't able to function. I mean, that's why champs now stays open all night. And he ran the format. I tell you what, man, he ran the off-road format in our heats, and I really liked it. So I pushed Scotty. I kind of talked to him about something with the on-road side, about maybe running the controlled practice in our heats, but then still keeping it open at late night for people to come do whatever they want. But the off-road thing went really well in our heats. Now, maybe it's less practice, maybe it's not. All I know is I didn't stand in line for an hour. So I think at some of these races where there's open practice, where this line thing pops up, that's what makes it tough. And we've been on a really good side of it in on-road because we haven't had a line, right? But I've gone to some of these off-road races in the last year, dude, and the line wraps around the track, dude. I mean, I can't even look, Cleveland this year, when there was a line, it was maybe to the door, right, Max? Like to the door coming out the track. Well, all right. The one night they opened up for off-road practice, bro, they opened up for an open session, 2-hour open session of practice. The line came from the driver's stand out the door, down past Motor Tech, back into the ballroom. That's where the line was. So, I mean, you were going to stand in line. If you were at the tail end of that, you were going to be in line for an hour before you even got to drive your car. And so it's like, that's just, for me, then if we get to that point, then we need to be, and it was no difference. IIC used to be the same thing. It was practice in a controlled round, and Scotty was on top of it. Doors closed at a certain time. You guys are out here. Go enjoy Vegas. And then we're back the next day and did it. It's a very controlled. It's similar to like that in Europe, right? These guys show up, they get maybe 3 or 4 runs on the track, and then they're qualifying. Yeah. Where for a while we went and the Hootie Indoor Champs was based around getting a bunch of track time, and we've gone that way to where everybody wants to get their bang for their buck, right? You spend the money to come down, you want to run your car. And so, I mean, that's the other flip side to it, right? So I could see both. It's just, once it comes down to it's a time thing, right? There's only so much time in the day that we could do this. And so depending on how big, I mean, if we got 65 heats, I mean, how many heats you guys have at Can-Nats this year?
I remember 48.
something like that. Yeah.
47, 48.
I mean, you're talking 6-hour rounds almost there, man. I mean, two rounds, 12. I think Scotty's this year was his 2 rounds were almost 14 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like, you get into that, and it's like, well, what do you do? I mean, at some point, we're going to have to limit how many people could come. That's the next thing, is start limiting people. Or, you know, what are we going to do? Do touring car for 4 minutes and 12 scale for 6? I mean, you don't want to change that up, because then the problem is we're trying to host, you know, that's a lot. I hear a lot of guys talk about the rules and like how we do club racing. And I always club race like I raced. Right. So the guys at pro level, when they come to a Saturday race and then they finally decide to go out of town, they feel comfortable. Right. Because it's the same type of format. You know, once and those formats are all based off of what if Mar turns down. Right. Because that's the cream. That's the top of it. It's anybody that races RC cars passionately or competitively and has put time into it. That is the trophy we all want to walk away with it. And there's very few that do. But that's what then sets the tone for our racing spectrum, right? Of where we start going down from that. By the time it gets down to club racing, we're just doing whatever we got to do to keep the doors open at that point. But, you know, these rules all kind of set up. So when guys are like, let's change this, let's change that, let's change this. It's like, well, you know, you're talking about changing a format that's been there for, you know, a decent amount of time. That's kind of a governing system. Like, you know, it's, you know, and I guess, but that, I don't know how that would, you know, if we start changing to nationals used to be 6-minute touring car runs. Yeah. And they finally went back to 5-minute because of the time thing. So I guess if, you know, if we keep wanting to let unlimited entries and then limited head count to these things, then it's going to have to start to adjust some of the time, whether it's the time that we're running, because they're already condensing us in between, right? I mean, Scotty does a turnaround like a minute and a half, dude, in these races where people are off the driver's stand, out marshaling on the track, and boom, we're going. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the next thing would be, well, if we got, you know, 50 heats and I could save a minute a heat, you just save 50 minutes off your program. Mm-hmm. So, but then it's like, well, you know, it's not what these other tracks, and then who, you know, I think the thing is we all try to get on board, you know, to have a success as a whole. We all try to get on board to support the same type of rules, but it's tough to do that from region to region and track to track, because, you know, we all got to do what we got to do to make sure that we're functioning. I got lucky at pro level. We had a pretty decent group of travel racers.
Yep.
So, and then the new guys that would show up, they didn't know any different. You know, they just, this is what it is. It's 5-minute touring car heats, 8-minute 12 scale heats, and they run foam tires in 12 scale and rubber tires in touring car, and they just kind of got in where they fit in. But, you know, as things start to change, you know, some guys might be like, you know what, I enjoy racing for 4 minutes instead, and maybe the turnout's better for that. So they adjust that and change. It's, you know, no one, the rules are there to use them if you want to. No one's forcing you to have to use those rules, I guess. And so that's where things can kind of change from track to track. But then it gets hard if you travel there, right? Like you said, Mark, early on, it's like, well, that guy doesn't have that car, or they don't race that class.
Yeah.
You know, or stuff like this. And so it's like, it's a lot easier if we could all get on board with at least one rule set. Then it makes it easier for an out-of-town racer to come in, or a guy from another region to travel over and stuff like that. But those things are also very rare. At the end of the day, there's a lot of treks that are very successful in the U.S. that I would say there's probably a chunk of drivers at their track that's never even been to a big race. And some of those tracks are the more successful ones, because it's just a bunch of dudes out having a good time, hanging out with their friends. This is what we do on Saturday, and I'm having a blast, you know. And some of those tracks do really, really well versus the hardcore race tracks. We would have to fight. I had to fight hard, because my guys that would travel race, they would just show up and test. So there wasn't a lot of racing. So I used to get back and get on. I'm like, well, we've got to race.
Yeah.
You know, and
we have the same problem here. Our problem up here is that usually the permanent tracks up here usually don't survive, because the first thing that's said is only the fast guys run there, or only the good guys run there. As soon as that happens, I know it's the end of the track, right? Whether it was whether it was fast cats, whereas this one, as soon as it gets that that thing that only the good guys go there, right? And then you see the bottom guys start to drop off a few more, right? And who's left is 10, 15 guys, right?
Yeah, that's happened everywhere.
They find
I mean, it
somewhere else
happens
to race,
everywhere.
right? Yeah.
It
Which
happens.
I can't. I tried fixing, or I've tried to fix in the 40 years, and you can't fix it.
No, you can't fix it. It just happens. As soon as that goes out, I mean, people used to say that about pro level, and they're like, oh, well, they take things pretty serious over there. And it's like, well, no, I mean, we try to follow rules.
Exactly.
There's a rule format for what we do,
Yeah.
and we try to follow that. Like, it's not that I'm not going to let you run because you've got some outlaw cheater motor. I'm going to let you run, no problem. But these are rules. This is what we try to follow. Try to get on the same page with us.
And that's what happens at the Canadian Nats. We have a lot of like club level guys, right? And honestly, most of them that came, I was so happy to have Alex show up or this guy show up, and it's me that's happy. I want to say, you could ask Max. Half the building don't even know who Alex is.
Right.
Which is fine. The only one.
No, it's fine. They know he's really good driver.
Yeah, right. But the one there's another local, right? And what happens is over there, they just basically let everybody run almost what you want. So when they start coming to Canadian Nats, it's just like, well, what do you mean I can't run that body? Well, it's not even in that class. How come I can't run these tires? How come I can't run this motor and speedo? I never heard of this motor and speedo, right? We can't tech it. So they go and they find other equipment, but they do have a much better turnout than anywhere you've ever seen.
Well, it's a group of guys showing up and having fun. Like when drag racing started getting big.
Yep.
In the very beginning, me and Paul went to an event up in Wisconsin just to kind of check it out because Paul had this one motor for a while. It didn't sell well.
Yeah.
It was a red one. I don't know what he called it, but it was something like some top speed motor or something.
Launch.
Yeah, we something like this might have been before before his actual launch line. Like this was, and so they didn't sell well. None of them were using it in racing, and all of a sudden these things started selling. And Paul's like, and what we realized, the reason it was selling is because these dudes just like the color red because it matched. So we went to this event, and dude, I mean, it was like guys were having fun. They're driving their cars in the parking lot before they go drag race it, and they're barbecuing, families are out there. And I'm like, I told them right then, I said, this ain't going to last. I said, this vibe they've got going on isn't going to last and it happened, dude. As soon as these other dudes got involved that were like, my car only hits the strip. I'm not going to run it over there in the parking lot. And then they're doing this. And then these guys, they're charging off of their car battery in their truck. They go over and look at this dude and they're like, what kind of charger's that? And then it's just all goes downhill from that. It's like, oh, well, I've got a Slash. Well, yeah, I got a $700 custom built drag car, and then that's where we are now. And the drag industry is still doing really well. It's just consumed by a different group, but it's smaller than what it was. I mean, when we went to this one, man, I mean, there was 400 people out there, dude, just having a great time. It wasn't even a money race. It was like the guy just drove his car down the drag strip and then went over on the other side of the dirty parking lot and started driving it over there. It's like, it's like, so, I mean, that's the difference in it. And I think that community that does really well in that, like I've noticed A Scale Off-Road has a split. Okay. There's the hardcore travel big race guys, obviously your Mayfields and those guys and all this stuff. And then the group that travels around of like the DNC and all these big races. But there's a huge group of people that regional race A Scale, dude, that have a 3-year-old car and a camper that they just show up, and that's what they do in their summer time.
Yeah,
they go travel around regional. They show up and race. They've never been to a big race, and they just like running. They've got this 4-year-old Kyosho that runs every year, and they show up and run it. They don't even think about it. They're running tires from a year ago, and they're just out here having a blast. But we don't, the A Scale market has that, and I don't think there's any other market that's been able to coexist with. I don't want to say bashers, because they're not really bashers, but they're not overly competitive racers.
You got that,
right?
And
A Scale
they get together once a month. They all show up with their trailers. It's a beautiful track, but they show up. They're there from Thursday to Sunday. Even if it rains out, we get mad if it. Remember back if it gets rained out, you're pissed. These guys, okay, see you next month. Yeah.
They travel like we see it, man. I mean, I've got a local track here in St. Louis called Dirt Burners, and it's the same thing. I mean, some of these guys don't go to any, and they just travel around to these like 4 or 5 tracks that are in the region, roll up with their camper, hang out, grill hot dogs the week,
drink beer, yeah,
and go home.
Yeah,
which I haven't. We definitely don't have that in on road.
Drew, but they're the best there. Drew, you missed your heat. Okay, I got another one.
It's like, hey, we're here having a good time with my family, and I've got my kids, my wife, and my aunt and uncle are here, and these are my buddies over here. And we all got our campers. It's like the gypsies of RC racing showing up, So I mean, but there's just that community though.
Yeah,
is a community that is probably our racing community. It's bigger than our racing community, right? I mean, that's why companies like Traxxas just shadow. I mean, they just Traxxas is one of the biggest RC companies in the world, dude. They're known all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's part of the thing, because everybody, here's the deal, dude. Everybody can go in their backyard and play with a monster truck and have a blast, right? I still, to this day, sometimes, like, I remember racing a short course truck for the first time, and I was like, this thing is so fun. Like, I don't say that. I mean, touring car, don't get it wrong. I have fun because I have fun in the competitiveness of it.
Yeah.
Right. But like the driving of the car, just go out there and have fun, not worry about the setups, right? I mean, those things you can't even tell if the shocks are built and they got oil in them or anything. So it's kind of like driving Euro truck, the same thing. It's just like you're just out there driving and having a good time. But I think that's a tough thing, because the on-road has always been prestigious, right? It's always been this level, and it's not I don't want to say it's expensive. I don't want to use the word cheap, but it's when you're going to look and getting into it, and it's like, well, here's a 2-wheel drive buggy versus here's a touring car. You're talking about half the cost. So that's why we see, in off-road, especially with me now being part, the last few years, I'm doing management for the off-road and the on-road side of things. And so I've always watched off-road because I've always been, I'm a fan of RC, period. Yeah. And I did a little bit back in the day, but I've gotten more involved with it from the team side, and then also just being in the industry a little bit more these last years. And so I'm blown away by all the young kids, man. I mean, just, it blows my mind. I'll go to these races, and where the one track, since I still sit in a chair on the driver's stand, right, I get all the little kids by me, because by this little cutout part where they could see over. And so, I'm up there driving. I got like 4 10-year-olds next to me and stuff, and they're having a blast. And, you watch these kids drive, and you're like, wow, man. I mean, there's a couple of kids out West Coast, this Connor Espec kid. I think I said his last name right, but I mean, a bunch of these kids, the Alton Henley, these youngsters that are just, you're like, wow, man, these kids are getting the idea. They're driving around the track, but the off-road part is that entry to that, right? It's that doorway. Then little kids see the cars jump. They're like, oh, that's cool. It's very rare do you get a 10-year-old. It's just like, that mod touring car looks really good going around the track, Dad. Like, I want to drive one of those. Of course, he's a kid. It's a toy. He looks at it like that's a blast. But you take that same kid to an off-road track, bro, he's looking at that like, I can tell you this. There's way more kids in the U.S. and probably Canada that are driving dirt bikes versus go-karts.
Yeah.
And it's that same concept that goes over. And so I was blown away by that, just the aspect of the younger generation. And I think we've done fairly well in on-road. I mean, we've seen some youngsters come up through the industry, and we've seen some talented kids that were young. But, most of them, like, I remember meeting Jacob Cruz for the first time. Mm-hmm. And, he was phenomenal at the age. He still is a phenomenal driver. But at the age that he was, to drive a mod touring car around a track was just mind-blowing, But his dad, Mark, was in the industry, was in the hobby. He was a very successful racer. And this is what then coexisted.
You're right, and that's what happens in on-road. Usually, you find out somebody is younger. Their dad raced. Their dad was an on-road guy. It's very seldom that the dad.
Right, the off-road. Like, I remember talking to some of these dads from the off-road track, And it's like, well, how did you? The dad's like, I have no clue about this stuff. We just walked into a hobby shop one day, and I wanted to get my kid a Christmas present, and we bought him this, and we come hang out at the track.
Yeah.
Where that's rarely doesn't happen in on road, because it's just it's at different, and the off road stuff. The cars are a tick easier to work on. There's not so much that needs to be worked on. It's more about driving, and obviously the cars need to work, right? I don't want to say they don't, but there's a lot more of the talent and of a good off-road driver is in the driving. Like being around some of these guys, going to race and being at a race with like Dakota and being at a race with like Chase. Sam was asking me, because we've all kind of dabbled in off-road and stuff, and it's a wake-up call. That's for sure, which I would assume it's no different if some of them came over and ran on-road.
Yeah.
But, Sam was like, I was like, the difference in these guys is the speed in the air. And they've got such a reaction to what the car needs to do in the air that they're doing it before, the car is going through the air faster, if that makes a sense. Like, I feel like when I'm on the track with these dudes, like I'm carrying good corner speed, I'm getting through, and then, man, they're still a second faster than me a lap. Some of these races, some of the stock guys were quicker than me in the 40+ mod class. And so I'm watching them and I'm just like, these guys are, the one race I went to, there was a double, and I was downside it, landing it all nice and going. And I'm like, man, my car's just not slowing down enough. I kept saying, and Dakota looks at me and goes, have you tried driving harder? And I'm like, what? I'm out there trying to be smooth and roll this thing around. He's like, come watch me, Drew. And so this same section, like he hits this double, but dude, he over jumps the double and lands in the next face of the jump going up, which then scrubs the speed of the car. And I'm like, what? Like, you wouldn't think that's fast. So then I go out there, well, dude, guess what? That is fast. It's like, well, I'm like, how, so that instinct of that ability that those guys have with the control of the car in the air, how to scrub the speed, how to do those things. It's pretty crazy, man, to see that. And I've been able to see that pretty decently the last 2 years at the races, but not only see it, but be on the track with these guys running too and feeling what they're feeling. It's quite a bit of a difference. And so these kids at that younger age, they start doing it, because you look at, Dakota when he started, you look at, the Ryans when those guys, there was a story that Kimwald used to tell about Cavalieri. They had this track out in California called SoCal, and it was the Mecca. It had a indoor dirt track, and it had this banked asphalt oval track that they also ran on road. And dude, that track was so unique. The on road track was so unique. It was mind blowing. I mean, just super fast. And every Saturday night would be like a world's event. I mean, you'd get guys like Tosolini, Billy Easton, these guys that would come out and race on road, but then you'd have Kinwald, all these other dudes showing up to off road. And that's where Tebow, I think it was Tebow and Cavalieri and those guys all kind of came up club racing right when they were young. And Dirt was telling this story about, what talent is. Somebody asked him to talk about talent, and Cavalieri and his dad, because Lou used to work on Cav's stuff when he was younger. Well, they went to dinner. And so Kinwald, he have all these little Kinwald people around him, because he was just a legend in his own at these tracks, and dudes would always just be around Kinwald to pick up whatever they could. And so Kinwald's like, I'm going to show you guys something. And so he went over and emptied all the shock oil out of Cavalieri's truck, right? Took all the shock oil out and put the shocks back on the truck. And Cav and them show back up. No one says anything. Cav goes out to run the qualifier and TQs. Okay. Now, Kinwald tells all these dudes, pay attention to when they come off the track. And so Cav comes over, he's looking at Lou, and Cav's like, yeah, the car's good. He's like, something didn't feel right. He's like, just put some new tires on it. And that was it. I mean, he went out there, and so that was, here he went. He had no shock oil in the shocks. Kid just went out there, drove the thing to his talent ability. And that's those guys that are talented, they adapt so quick. Yeah. And that's one of the bigger things that I've always seen with these guys. And that's what makes sometimes working on setup with these dudes very difficult, because they can adapt to a setup change so quick where they could either one, go the same speed or go faster. So it was like, what do you do with that sometimes? But some of those guys were super talented in that aspect of being able to make a change and not really know of the difference because they could adapt to that so quick and just drive it to whatever pace it is. So that was one of those stories that Dirt always used to tell. That was always it was always a good story to know that. I mean, Cav was young, man. I mean, maybe 12 years old when that went on at the SoCal track. So it was pretty cool to hear some of the stories. Like I said, man, I was really fortunate when I came up in my time. I was a little bit of a late bloomer. I was 21, 22 years old when I started racing, when Andrew was born. And I got to be around some of the, at that time frame, I got to be around some of the best guys that had ever done it. Yeah. As far as our side, being around Ralph, Paul, Barry, Blackstock, Dumas, Tosolini. I mean, these guys were guys that I got to be around. A lot of them were on the X-Ray team. I remember at one time, we had Barry, Mike Blackstock, Dumas, Paul, Kinwald. They were all on. I mean, you go to these 3-4 races a year and you're pitting around these dudes. And to be around those guys and learn some of the things that they did and understand that, I was very fortunate to be in that position, to be around those dudes like that and just see how they work, how their mental side of the hobby was, because that's a big deal, right? Like you said, you didn't make a change. You went up there and thought it was the best car you ever drove.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to be around those guys. I mean, me and Paul traveled for years. I think I was on the team before he was. I always tell people that I was here before Paul was. And I remember Paul ran a Novak race. My memory's always pretty good. Paul probably can't remember half of this stuff, but there was a Novak race that Paul was in between sponsorship. He wasn't racing for Losi anymore, and he didn't know what he was doing. And he ran an HPI car, and he was going to try to show people that he could win with this HPI car. I don't think he won that year. I could be wrong. I don't think he won that year. He podiumed or something, and I remember Scotty and them sold this car. And so we used to go out to this restaurant called the Boulder Junction. That was up at the Novak race. That's where everybody went every night. This I don't know what it was. They had a mountain. They had these goats on the wall. It's a cool place to go hang out. But I remember being there with Ralph, and I was talking to Ralph, and I was like, man, and he's like, hey, go talk to Lemieux. And so Lemieux's at the bar with Dieter, and I walk up to him, and of course, Lemieux's just like, who's this guy? They sent Drew. They used to call me Baby Drew back in the day because I was so new to it all. And they're just like, so Paul took it kind of as a kick in the face. Like, they sent Drew over here to talk to me about joining the team. And I remember telling him, I'm like, hey, this would be a great decision for you, bro. I was like, this company's headed in this direction. We had this long talk, and he just kind of laughed it off. And then I think he went and did something with Kyosho for a minute. That was something he was testing out, and that just didn't. I think there was one race, and he just realized it wasn't working. And then he called us up, man, and ran our car. I believe the first race was 05 Cleveland. That Paul ran our car, and he won with a 2005 TK05, FK05, I think is what they called it. And he won with that car, and he's been on the team since then. And me and him traveled quite a bit because Ralph kind of chilled out with doing electric for a while. Me and Paulie probably traveled with each other 15 races a year for 10 years, dude. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know each other. I know when Paulie had a bad night at the track that we were getting Domino's pizza and he was getting a box of wine. and that's what we were doing, and we knew each other and we got along really with each other with doing that stuff. And it was really cool to be around him because Paulie did a lot of stuff off the field. I don't think I've ever seen the dude. He might not even know how to use a set of droop gauges. A lot of people don't know this, but he go back and look at some of his setups. He never has a droop number written on there. He'll tell you what it is over ride height. So somebody would ask him, like, well, what droop are you running, Paul? And he's like, well, it's one over ride height in the front and 1.5 over ride height in the rear. And people are looking at him like, what do you mean? So he'd show him, but that's how he always he set the car up to a feel of it, and always had to have his hands on the car to kind of work through it. And He was a tweak master. He knew how to tweak the cars right. So, I mean, I got to see a lot of that from him. Never used the scale, never used the gauge to tweak the car. It was all by feel. And so, I mean, it was really cool to be around that and see that, man. I mean, Paulie, like I said, he was one of the hardest working dudes in the industry. And Barry Baker used to work pretty hard too. When he was on the team, he was always hunting for setup. And it was cool to be around those guys just to see that and be in the industry at that time. Now it's still cool. It's just different. You know, I hear a lot of guys say, oh, well, you know, the industry is different. It's like, well, in on-road, man, the guys that left, maybe because they had to go pursue a real career, that on-road just wasn't able to pay the bills anymore. We lost a very talented group of drivers. Where off-road's been able to sustain those drivers. You know, some of these guys that were been around, they're still around racing. Where on-road, it's like the guys have kind of gone and left, you know, like the Mike Dumases, the Mike Blackstocks, you know, these guys that once the industry kind of started to get smaller and on-road than what it was first the heyday of when I was involved, you know, we lost a very talented group of racers. And that changed up on-road quite a bit to where, you know, we started growing, but we didn't have the talent, you know, like the dirts, like Kinwall, man. We were at a race, and for a while we ran 8-degree caster blocks in touring car on foam tires, and they didn't sell those. So like you only had so many of them. And I remember Kinwall was at this race, and Paul was talking about he really wanted to try 12 degrees. And they just, X-Ray wouldn't make them or anything like this. Well, Kinwall he'd sit on a couch at Cleveland in his room, his pit table. He'd sit Indian style, and he'd drink his Starbucks and smoke his Winston cigarettes. And this is what he would do. Well, he's in there and he's thinking, well, he would carry a little bottle of like graphite dust with him, bro. Like he would shave a shock tower down and keep the powder. Okay. And so he had these 0-degree blocks that he ended up taking this powder and an epoxy and filling the hole on this caster block. Okay. And then he re-drilled it at a race to what they were trying to get it set up to be a 12-degree caster block. Like, you know, we lost guys like that in the industry, and we lost guys like that could teach that to people. I mean, like I was on the scale end of seeing that. I mean, there's some guys in the hobby now, like the Rain Gormans or the Paxton Hermans or these younger kids. They'll never see anything like that, or they might not even have a thought process to do something like that. Where Kinwall came from that old school, and I'm sure you know, Mark, was like, if it ain't there, we'll make it.
Yep.
You know, like, what do we got to do? Like Paulie always used to say, the easiest way to start an RC business up is go to AutoZone and buy a bunch of fancy lubricants and put them in cool bottles and then sell them. That's the, you know, guys used to talk, what oil is that? Well, it's my special oil. No, it's not. It's Marble Mist Oil is exactly what it is. We were at a race in California, and we were running at this indoor track. It was West Coast. They had indoor asphalt. And it was super fun, man. If you ain't ever ran indoor asphalt, it's a blast, dude. Most traction you'll ever run on. But Paul was testing this new sauce, and he called it the crack. It was what he was calling it. And this stuff, dude, was like, the sauce was in this little bottle, and it was like the thickness was like 100K, like 100,000. It was that thick. And you would put like 4 drops of the tires on, and then you would just rub it in the tire. Dude, this stuff worked great there, you know, because the track was super clean. Well, we ran out of it, and I was like, Paulie, what are we going to do? You know, because I was beating some guys at that race that I probably shouldn't have been beating because of this sauce.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Paulie, what are we going to do? He's like, we just got to find an auto parts store. And so Paulie went to this auto parts store, got everything he needed, and whipped up some new sauce for us to run the next day. So, I mean, it's funny to think about that. But, yeah, I mean, I've got stories that you guys would have to – we'd have to have a 24-hour podcast to get through all that stuff with some of that stuff. But yeah, it was good times, man. And I don't want to say that we're in bad times. It's different. I'm enjoying the hobby now just as much as I did back then. Seeing new people, new people getting into it, new people traveling to some of these events. I mean, you guys have got a really good group of new guys now up in your area that are traveling. That's really cool. So I like to see that, and I think the heartbeat for on-road electric racing is still there, and I think it's growing even in the current situation we're in with the economy not being well, with these tariffs, with the euro, with whatever's going on, right? The wars, all this stuff. I still feel like we're growing, and I'm seeing new people at all these events. And that's a big thing for me. And that's what I look for a lot, being the team manager and being, someone that works in the industry. I'm looking at, the race was decently, like Cleveland was pretty big last year.
It's been
bigger than it was, but there was a lot of new people there, man.
Yeah.
And we got the Canadian turnout was big last year also.
Yep.
But there was a lot of new people. There was a lot of, this is my first time being at the Champs.
Yep.
So when you hear that, like, I don't care if you only hear that from 5 or 6 people, that's big time, man. Because there was a few years that it was just the same sorry crew looking at each other at these events, looking like, hey, I'll see you next month down at Snowbirds, or this and that. And now we're finally getting it seems like we're getting a new travel group of guys that are interested. Because once you come, man, I mean, you guys know, once you come, you're big.
You are.
It doesn't matter. You could have the worst race you've ever had, and once you come to one of these big ones, and you're bit by the experience of it, right? And the bugs are out. You've shooken everything off of kind of that anticipation or that not knowing, and then you get there and you realize you had a great time. You've met a bunch of new people. Everybody's been, for the most people, helpful. But you've got to have that experience. So that's why I tell guys all the time, man, you don't come like these guys be like, oh, well, I'm not fast enough, or I'm not this. You don't go there for that your first time. You go for the experience.
Well, that's what
because you're going to leave faster. And to be on the track at the same time, right? Like me and Max can't club race together, or me and Bryce can't club race together, but we can meet each other 3 or 4 times in that year and be on the same track at the same time, working on our stuff together. So that experience is going to help them. It's going to help me. It's all that comes into. So you first and foremost want to come for the experience.
In the end, it's the friendships. Bryce finally gets that too, right? Like after his hockey career was done and everything else. And I said it in another podcast. He actually said it to me. He goes, Jesus Christ, Dad, I talk more to these RC guys than any of my hockey buddies. We used to ride on a bus together and all this. I barely talked to them. I talked to all these RC guys. Yeah. I know what you mean now. The friendships, they're all over North America, chit-chatting. You know what I mean? I said, that's what it's about, kid. In the end, man. It really is. And it's looking forward. Like when you guys went to him and Max, where'd you guys go? Was that EA's track, or no? Which track did you guys go to? Same thing.
Well, they did a lot of traveling.
We did a lot of racing this year,
yeah. They were excited to go. You know what I mean?
It was the indoor champs. You guys came to the Hootie indoor champs at EA's.
And they look forward to seeing everybody. He goes, oh, Thing's going this year. It's going to be awesome. Or I'm going to see Thing again, or blah, blah, blah. And that's what the whole traveling. And about Cleveland, you're right. There's a few guys over here that think that, well, why am I going to spend all that money when I know I'm not going to win? I said, it doesn't matter. You're not going to win. Goes, what do you mean? I said, you're not. There's always somebody better, and you realize where the pecking order is when you get there. But it's cool to see that you made the D main. Next year, I'm going to try to make the C main. You can't walk in there thinking that I'm going to take, right? I said,
no, I mean, not unless you know. I mean, you'll know. I mean, even when you do know, you don't know, because you just don't. It's like movie. Any given Sunday, man. I mean, I've been at races where you thought Paul was going to dominate, and some things just didn't go that way, or other whatever it was. I mean, it took me. I mean, my first big race win came in 2005. It was a Roar Nationals on asphalt. I've never even ran asphalt rubber tire before. Like, I was a hardcore foam dude. Yeah. And Ralph was like, hey, we want you to come down to this race in Florida. It's on asphalt. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I qualified second and ended up winning the thing. And that was my first national title. And, I had TQ'd a couple races, and I couldn't get over that bump, but it's like, once you get bit by that, man, I mean, it's, you want it more and more. And the experience, or going out to restaurants, or just being in a new area. Like, I don't think if I wouldn't have got into RC when I did, I definitely wouldn't have traveled our country as much as I have.
You would have been in jail.
I'd probably be in jail. Very good. I tell people all the time, they laugh about it, but I'm like, RC saved my life.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got into it. It was Andrew was born in 2001. And And my dad just said, he goes, maybe it's time to look for some type of hobby. Let's slow your life down a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead of being out and about and doing what every other, I was 21 at the time and just doing whatever I wanted to do pretty much at that moment. And so my uncle Larry was a hardcore. He's a racer, super competitive. I mean, he's won a national title war event in F1, but he's also a hobbyist. I mean, he'll drive a submarine to fly a helicopter.
Yeah,
like he has it all. He loves all the stuff. And he was running a T-Max one day, and it was at my grandma's house because he's married to my aunt. And I heard the thing shift, and I was like, dude, what is that? And so he's telling me, and so he's like, hey, man, there's this track. And he's like, let's go check it out. And I was like, okay. And so this track was maybe, 10 minutes from our house. And we went over there one Saturday, and it was some good old boys. Dude, they didn't even have a driver's stand, bro. It was a 60 by 36 carpet track that you just stood floor level.
Yep.
And they had a big oval crowd, but there was an on-road group there of like 20 dudes.
Mm-hmm.
And so Larry comes back. And he's like, what do you think, Drew? He's like, I've been thinking about, I used to do this because he was in the military. So he had traveled around. He had seen some of like the Tamiya series and all these other little things. Like he knew about the industry already. And I was like, you know what, dude? It's close to the house. I'm like, we could drink beer over there. I'm like, this is cool, dude. I could do this. This is something that then can get me out of whatever I was doing at the time, whether it was club hopping or out with my friends, just getting into trouble. And so I was like, so that night, dude, he ordered my first race car was an HPI Pro 3 Hard Edition. And he ordered everything, dude. He ordered it. I don't know whether it was from Tower Hobbies or whatever, but he ordered the cars, speedos, radios. He ordered all the stuff, dude.
Yep.
And that next week we were over at the track, dude. And I remember there was a guy by the name, he's passed away. His name was Tony Peroni. And he was extremely passionate about the hobby. He was a decent driver, just never one of those guys that could be fast, good mechanic, but super passionate about the hobby.
Yep.
And I remember the first time he came over, he's like, dude, have you ever driven one of these things before? I'm like, no, this is my first weekend out, and the guy's just like, well, that's pretty crazy. And, here me and my uncle are driving these HPI Pro 3s when the TC3s were ruling you didn't run. It was a TC3, and here we're up with these belt cars that, white Delron diffs and Hara's bling on them and all this stuff. Because my uncle was a big Hara fan, he was like, Hara's the best driver in the world. And we don't even have the right foam tires. I mean, we showed up with like BMW bodies when everybody was running Stratuses. It's like, and so then as I started to kind of get into it, I'm telling Larry, like, hey, we got to get this body, bro. And this is the tire compound we want, and blah, blah, blah. And then as I started learning, there was a couple oval guys that took me under, showed me how to build a motor, what brushes, because they all recognized right away that, this dude has got something here. And I didn't even know about big racing at that time. And so I started beating everyone at that level, at that track. It was called Pontoon Raceway. I started beating them pretty quick. And Tony Peroni was like, hey, dude, there's another track. And I'm like, oh, wow, really? Like, I thought this was the only, I mean, I hadn't even looked at magazines yet, bro. And so he's like, no, there's this other track. And he goes, this is where all the fast guys race, Drew. So he's like, let's go down there. And so we went down there. It was in Carbondale, Illinois. And it was in a building that was on a guy's property. And this guy was very passionate, Andy, very passionate. But I met Skip Starkey. I met Jimmy Pearsall, Steve LaFera. And this was Sean Cochran's home track when he was around. But, Steve LaFera had a company called Race Tech back in the day. They did motors. Skip Starkey was a very top-level racer. At that time, he had already won Cleveland in a modified 12-scale class, and so was Jimmy Pearsall. Jimmy Pearsall was already a national champ. And so I got down there, and this was their own like personal track. Like Pontoon, we'd get like 30, 40 guys out the race. Carbondale, they'd get like 15. Right. But like the 5 of these dudes were the quickest dudes in the region. And so I got down there, dude, and I got my butt kicked. And I remember Skip coming over, and he's like, you got the wrong car, bro. He gives me the whole talk, and I'm like, oh, the cars can't make that big of a difference, blah, blah. I went down and ran a couple more times, and then he got me a TC3. It was like, hey, build this thing and come down. And it was like, that thing was totally different then. It was like, oh, I remember telling my uncle, I'm like, dude, we've been running the wrong car, bro. You know, like, and then I got racing with these guys. And I started finally getting fast to where I could beat them, you know, and these guys were A-main drivers at big races. And so then Skip told me, he's like, hey, man, he's like, I think you need to go to one of these big races. And I'm like, you know, looking at him like, what? And he's like, yeah, there's a Roar National. And I'm like, well, what's Roar? Like, none of this stuff, dude, is not clicking to me. He's like, well, you know, so he gives me the whole breakdown. Roar's the governing body. You know, they crown a national champion in this class here. And the race is up in Minnesota. And he's like, let's get you signed up, dude. And so I was like, all right, man. And I knew Mo. Mo was a racer that had raced quite a bit already. And I had met Mo before he came over, and me and him just clicked. And so Mo heard I was going. So he's like, hey, I'll roll with you. And so we went up to this track up in Minnesota, man. And it was my first national event. This track was huge. It was like 100 by 60, dude. I mean, you came in because we're running foam tires, a gray carpet. It was like a black snake around this thing. I mean, it had like 18 turns, bro. And I remember walking into it, and Mo looked at me, and he's like, Drew, just stay in the middle of the black stuff. Is what he told me, because it was so much bigger than what I was used to. But dude, we got up there, bro, and I was the only driver in the A-main that had a white T-shirt on that thing, bro. I qualified fifth with no sponsors, and no sponsors. I mean, no one helped me, and nothing. I mean, stuff was all bought. Now the batteries did come from a Ultra Hobby Shop in Cincinnati that Mo knew that, you know, he was able to get us some good packs, but you know, I showed up with basically, you know, nothing, dude. Like 6 months into racing, showed up to this national, qualified fifth, and everybody thought I was a local until they announced me. You know, because you know, you show up to these tracks, you meet locals that you don't know who they are, and they're fast because they're local and fast.
Yeah.
And so I remember that because Ralph came over and introduced himself at that race to me, and he thought I was a local until they announced it that I was from St. Louis. So I mean, I had a very quick coming to it. I had a very strong personality too that probably helped me out. Like I wasn't scared to talk to people, or I didn't really keep anything. The only thing that I might not tell you was my rollout back in the day. But you know, that was the other thing. I was going to tell you guys to ask EA who won his first national championship, and I always joke with him. You know, I won his first on-road national championship. So I tell guys all the time, when we used to walk around and he had the shirts back in the day that said EA Motorsports, it's in the can, you know, and it would say national champion. I'm like, that's because of me. And so, you know, he would get mad because EA, before on-road, EA was very fast at oval.
Oval, yeah.
And was super fast, but he just didn't catch on. It took a while for him to get caught on and on-road. And so where me and him met was 2005 down in Florida. I was running for Curtis Schlott's company called DC Motorsports. Mm-hmm. And Curtis used to do a lot of winding for motors, and he was trying to start a company. And I was friends with him. He didn't really have a stock program, and I was a stock driver at the time. And so I said, well, hey, I'm going down to this race. And he's like, well, hey, my buddy EA is going to take care of you. And I'm like, he goes, just go find this hillbilly in a trailer. And he goes, he'll take care of you. So I was like, all right, man. So, you know, I was still kind of learning people, and I had been fast because we were just coming off from the first Vegas, and I was really fast there at Vegas. And so we went to this race, and I went and found EA, and sure enough, it was exactly like Curtis said. EA had that hillbilly tone, and, you know, here he is with the gray head of hair, and, you know, and so I was like, I went in. Of course, he didn't really know who I was. I didn't know who he was. And I was like, hey, Curtis said this. And EA's like, yeah, just give me your 3 motors. Because, you know, stock guys, we'd buy the 3 motors. You were allowed to get 3 motors back in the day. You'd go get all 3. And so EA then would do his thing, you know, cut the comms down. And that was when EA was just starting to do this F-brush.
Yeah.
But I ended up winning this race, dude. And that was EA's first national title to promote his F-brush and on-road racing. And so I always joke with guys. Now, you know, he's multiple time. I raced for him for years too back in the day. I remember this one race, we showed up to one race, he dyed his hair brown. He dyed his hair brown. Like, I'm sure if he's listening right now, he's laughing about this, but he dyed his hair brown, bro. And I had the shittiest race that I ever had. And I remember telling him, like, dude, the next race, that white hair better be back. I'm like, don't ever. And then the other thing was too, is I would never, he brought his dyno to one of the races and it was a bad race for me. And so I told him, I said, dude, don't tell me. I don't want to know what that thing says. Like, I'm going to tell you what motor's fastest. Build all the motors to what you can make them the best. I'm going to run all three of them, and I'm going to tell you from the track being the dyno what motor I want to run. I said, I don't care what this machine says. Because, then EA's like, no, the machine's going to tell us, Drew. And every time that machine would screw me over, dude, it was never the fastest motor. And so I remember me and him raced for a long time together also, man. I mean, being around him and learning some of the stuff, because he's a really good mechanic. He has a really good understanding of the mechanics of the cars and working on them. And for a long time, my 12 scale would mostly sit in his pits at races just because he was a really good mechanic. I don't want to say I'm not a good mechanic, but at my age, and even back then, sometimes I would get lazy because, there would be some things. I was one of those guys, if my car went really well, I didn't want to touch it. Like, if I went out and had a really good run, I'm putting new tires on and maybe trying to find a better battery. I'm not even checking the ride height, bro. I'm not it ain't happening. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, it just went out and the car drove great. I didn't hit anything. So what do I need to do? I don't need to do anything. So I would be kind of in that sense of, but I also, like, the group of guys that I came up, Skip Starkey and them guys would always say, well, you could always drive better, or they would say, hey, it's good enough for who it's for, things like that. So, I mean, that's where I came up. Sometimes I think some of these guys coming up in the industry, it isn't cruel enough to them. Like, we're babysitting some of these dudes too much to where, I mean, dude, this is what this guy going, like, man, what kind of change can I do? And then he'd look right me in the face and like, you ever tried driving better? And it's just like, you're right, dude. You're right. I probably
don't get Mark started on that topic. Don't get Mark started on that topic, man.
Well, no, I mean, that's the truth to it, man. Like, I tell guys all the time, like, what's different? I'm like, it's just the idiot holding the controller at the end of the day. I mean, that's really what it is.
You talk like that at our track, Drew. They don't come back. Hey?
Yeah, I've had a couple guys that, Mark, me and you talked about track ownership. I've always told you the best thing about owning a track is that you can tell people not to come back. That's one of the best things to do. But yeah, I mean, you get into these, it's just like anything else. It's high school drama that comes in. Yeah. I mean, people are all competitive. It's just how do you deal with that side of anything? How do you deal with the competitiveness side of it? And I always tell guys, my big thing was, man, is it has to be balanced with some fun. Right. And I mean, Max has been in a couple times of the pits with me where, I'll start cracking jokes or being fun, saying something about something just to try to break up the atmosphere. If you go out and have a bad, your skin's got to be pretty thick to run with the crew that we have. I mean, you go out and have a bad run, I think, I don't know how I was busting Max's chops about VTA at the Hootie Championship. That was the only race I think I went out there and watched. I just wanted to see if he was going to fail so I could bust his balls when he came back off the driver's stand, So, I mean, but that's the fun of it. Like, I always tell guys, if I'm not busting your chops, dude, then, chances are I don't like you.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I think you got to have a balance of it. I want you to be competitive. I want you to work hard. But I also want you to be able to have fun with what you're doing and enjoy what's going on. And everyone needs to understand. I was also told from these same group of guys that there's always another race. There's always another race. And guys would say things like to me, like, you're only as good as the last race you went to. And so those things kind of got in my head. And it's like, we're not going to be able to win them all. And I've been around guys that had the talent to win them all. And I could tell you, I've seen them lose also.
Yeah.
So it's just part of, you got to have fun. You got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy the people that you guys are hanging out with. Like I said all the time, when I see a new travel group of racers coming, like the crew that you guys got traveling from Rose City and stuff.
Yep.
Like, it's a very fun group. The guys are all having fun together, laughing, having a good time at the event. And that's important. And you could get around that in a group or on a team, or, you don't even, like, dude, you don't have to be on team X-ray to pit with us. Like, if you run an X-ray car and you're coming to a race and we're able to, most of these races I could fit guys in. Snowbirds is the one that gets pretty tough because it's got that manufacturer's row. But, if you run our car and you want to pit with us, pit in the area, like, that's not a problem. Because we're trying to give you the experience and the aspect of the fun of racing and kind of seeing how we interact in the pits. It's not all seriousness all the time, but there is a time for it to be serious. But there also is a time that let's have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. The two things I want to mention up before we finish. I can't believe it's already been 2 hours.
I talk a lot, bro.
It's good though. I'm locked in right now.
Hey, anytime you need a filler, bro, somebody cancels, you just hit me up. I need about an hour advancement, and I'll be on this stuff. I could fill, 2 hours, no problem, bro. We could go till 12 o'clock at night over here and still be talking. But go ahead, Max. Go ahead, man.
The two things I want to bring up, because you mentioned for people that don't know or how it works, sponsorships. Obviously, the team manager, if someone's interested or how that works behind the scenes, what's involved, what do you need to do? So if you could talk about that for the first part. And the second part, got to get a little bit of juicy topics here. I want to talk about the relationship with your biggest competitor, Awesomatics USA. We've seen some guys transition over to the Awesomatics car. We haven't seen many guys go the opposite way. So from a team manager perspective, what's that balance like, and what are you looking to do for this coming season to maybe even out that back and forth?
Yeah. So the first part of the team manager stuff, there's a lot of behind the scenes work. There's a balance, right? Because I hear about, and I've heard you guys talk about, a lot of people are sponsored. So I could tell you my number, and I'm a team manager that works for a company that's not scared to allow this. A lot of companies won't tell you what they sponsor. I have no problem. Okay. In North and South America right now, North and South America off-road, on-road, I have 235 drivers. That's off-road and on-road, and that's from Dakota, Kevin E. Bear, all the way down to the bottom guy on the totem pole, right? It's my whole team. And so our team, I always try to balance that number to where we don't have too much, that we're not overcrowded in an area. Because my mindset of this is my guys are there to help you guys, right? My guys at your track are there to help promote that product, to help people with that product, to direct sales to the hobby shop on site, to kind of, do this, right? And so we never try to overgrow in any one area. And for me, I feel like that's pretty light to what, obviously other teams don't share their program, but for me, for off-road and on-road, I think there's some companies in the off-road that probably have double the amount of drivers that I do, just in off-road, right? So we really try to watch that. I don't have regional managers. I'm the end all be all. I'm the guy that I just have to. I know all the drivers. I could tell you everyone that's on my list. And so we really look, and I've told guys before, we get guys that will reach out in a certain area, and I'll look and I'm like, I just got too many. I got too many in this area. Or, we're if it's a good driver, right? If it's a driver that I really want, like, I'm going to make this work, but then, we're also going to change some stuff up and look around. I always try to stay under a certain number. And so my number has been 250 is what it's been since I've took over. I don't want to have over, and that's on-road, off-road. That's North America, so Canada, U.S., and South America all together. So, I've probably got, maybe 35 drivers down in South America, spread out. And so, these guys are all over the place. If you think about my numbers versus the states that we have, I'm really below what a lot of these other companies, I feel, right? No one wants to share their numbers. I have no problem sharing that because I get the aspect of, I own a hobby shop, right? I get the aspect of all this and guys like this. So I understand that side very well. And I'm very on top of that. I try to pay attention to that very well, that I don't want to, my goal with having a team driver is to stir up business in his region. Yeah. Whether it's, someone to show off the car, someone to help, then the local goes through and all the time my drivers are pushing. But I also tell my drivers, like, hey, you see a trash can full, take the trash out, dude. You know, this is something that you could do because you're obviously not buying your parts off the wall anymore. So you need to start helping. So there's a lot of my guys that run on the team that help with track layouts at their local place. They do a little bit of the extra stuff to kind of give back. And I want them to be involved in the community. And that's one of the main things. First main thing about being on our team is being active. If you're not active, you know, like that's what do you have a team deal for? You know what I'm saying? Like that's the first and foremost thing. It's like, I need you to be active. Now, I don't mean active by going to big races and doing a bunch of traveling. I mean, out in your region racing, dude. And it's like more than once a month, right? But the easiest way to do it, I tell guys all the time, is we don't really advertise it, right? You see a lot of these other brands like, we're open up for sponsorship, and we don't really advertise it. It's one of those things that, number one, if I think you need to be sponsored, I'm going to talk to you. Or you're going to reach out to me and go through our process, which our process is we have basically what we call as an RC America driver app. You fill out the driver app, and this is just basic information. To one, I can see where you're racing, right? Give me some of your stats, what area you're in, how much you race a month, stuff like that. And then once I do my due diligence of looking into some other things and maybe talking to some locals, or first and foremost, seeing what we have in this area. You know, if I look and you're racing at a track that I've already got 3 guys at, like chances are, dude, if you're not beating those 3 guys, you're not getting sponsored. And if you do, that means one of those 3 guys is not getting sponsored. So, and I'm very quick with doing that, man. I don't like the word on our team is contract customers, because it's not like you're not just a contract customer to me. You're not a contract customer to the company. You're part of the race team, which means you're representing, like, I don't care what discount you're getting. If you're getting a discount, period, you're representing this brand now. And these guys, at the end of the day, that group of those guys are my customer service people that are at the tracks every weekend, helping guys build shocks, helping guys do this, you know, making sure people are enjoyable coming to race, just all these things. They're the face of what we are at no level what they are. They could be, you know, at Kevin's level, or they could be at, you know, whoever's level, just barely making an A or being in the B, right? A lot of these guys can help, but they're there to help with our product, right? Help customers with our car, help hobby shops understand what they need to order, you know, things, all those things like that. So there's several things that we look at. I mean, obviously it gets down to a point where it's performance, right? I mean, you're only going to go so far in this industry at levels, because we have 6 different levels at RC America, right? And so you're only going to go through to a certain point to where you're doing everything you got to do to be at this level. To get going up to these next ones, it's going to be all solely performance based. You could help many people. You could build as many cars as you want. You could all this. It's only going to take you so far before you have to start showing a performance-based result. And then that then gets you to these next levels. But the easiest thing, if guys are wanting to be interested in running for RC America X-Ray, is to reach out to me. They could reach out to X-Ray. They could reach out to info. All that stuff at the end of the day will then, or RC America, all that stuff will end up coming to me, whether you reach out to X-Ray or RC America, to where I'll be the one kind of looking it over and seeing what it is. But, you know, like I said, we do have a cap. So I try to stay under this number, because I don't want hobby shops complaining to me, right? That's the main thing, because I want the tracks to be there. I'm very protective about tracks, and also tracks that have shops, because the main thing is I can't do what we do without tracks. Now, if hobby shops start closing down, that's one thing, and the internet online sales have taken that over, right? But I don't necessarily need hobby shops. I want them, but I need tracks for sure. If tracks start going away, that's a problem, because I don't have any ready to run product that we could go race. Like, I only have race equipment. So I need tracks first and foremost. So I try to do the best job of protecting those, on top of also the tracks that have hobby shops, and also hobby shops that are supporting tracks that are in the area. You know, we try to look at that. I think RC America does a really good job with their dealer stuff also. I mean, it's a process to be able to become a dealer at RC America. It's not something that's just easy. You don't just fill out your LLC and send in, you know, a check. They want to know, well, do you have your own building, and how close are you to the other dealer? I mean, they really go into looking into what is the case here, and just not signing everybody up, because that's these days that people know this in the industry is that a lot of these companies you call and you just get some type of direct account from them and shop with them and do whatever you want or start. So we really try to pay attention to that old school, to where we're really trying to be protective of the shops and understand the market. So does that kind of answer the team stuff of what you kind of wanted, Max? And the easiest thing is they can reach out to me if anyone's ever interested for racing for X-Ray. I'm on Facebook. My email is drewe@rcamerica.com. You see me at a race, come over and talk to me, man. I don't sugarcoat anything. I let you guys know what we look at. I don't try to, I'm pretty upfront about that stuff as far as what does it take to be on the team, what we're looking for, and but I look at everything. I'm just not looking at a guy that's like, oh, that dude's super fast. There's some things that I'm like, man, that guy's a really good mechanic, because that's sometimes that's bigger to the point. Like, if I get a team guy that's really fast that can't build his shocks, how's he supposed to help this dude at the local track build his shocks? So the second part of it, Awesomatics right now is our biggest competitor. I think that's probably pretty easy to say that. I'm not down talking Schumacher or Mugen or any of these other companies, but from what I've always seen in the past, it takes two to tango, and there's always two that seem to rise to the top and on road. Back when it was Losi Associated. Then X-Ray started kind of getting in there, and we started shaking up the whole thing, and then you saw Losi kind of disappear, and then it was Losi and Associated that went at it, and then Associated, then it was X-Ray and Associated, then it was X-Ray and Corrali, right? Mm-hmm. That went at it for some years, right? And then Corrali kind of phased away, and then Awesomatics came in. So the one factor is X-Ray's been there since the beginning and doing this, but we're also, and I don't say that that's because our product is superior. It's because we're a very passionate company. We're one of the only companies that's left that's a family-owned company, right? Most of these companies that started back in the day, whether it was Losi, Associated, Tamiya, they were all family-owned companies, right? So they're very passionate. And X-Ray is one of the last ones that does that. But yeah, for Awesomatics, I mean, I'm not going to lie, FJ's been a thorn in my side for a while. It makes it interesting. They have a good group of drivers, right? I mean, one of the best drivers right now in North America races for them, Sam. Sam is a very hard worker. He's at the track all the time. He puts in the effort. He's a great driver. So, but then it also gives us a challenge. Like, I mean, they were kicking our butt for a while. It was a tough deal. And then Kevin went on like that tear, right? Or we'd get lucky to have Alex come over here, or Bruno, or, but then Kevin kind of went on a tear for a while. And then we had, Robbie, and then G showed up running the car in stock. G had some really good results. Robbie Dodge has had some really good results. I mean, we also have a quality, I'd say touring car. We match them pretty similar. 12 scale, they've definitely been able to put the whooping on us as far as their team group that they have. Car's really good, and they have good hardcore 12 scale guys from Rayfield, Trandell. These guys that are what I call, purposely racers for 12 scale, right? But I don't know, this year we're looking in, obviously Kevin is our guy in mod, and he's done really well with it. He's done well with the pressure of holding that spot, and he's been able to have some good battles with Sam and Kemp. And then in stock, we've G took a little bit of a break this last season. He had some surgeries, and Robbie took a little bit of a break. And those were our two guys in stock that I felt that could run, G and Robbie could run with EA and Xavier and these guys. And so it sounds like those guys are getting prepared to kind of come back to the travel racing this carpet season. So I'm kind of waiting now. Like I said, this is our midpoint. June is when I start looking at where we're at on the team as far as where we've been from January to June. And then I start looking from July to December and seeing where we're going. And then it also, our calendar year kind of gets mixed up because the carpet season runs into the next year and starts, one of these things. But yeah, I think we're going to be we'll see where it's at. I think G's ready to get back to do some racing. So I'm hoping that G will see him maybe at like New York Grand Prix and Champs. And I'm hoping the same thing with Robbie, that we might see Robbie at like NYGP, Snowbirds, Carpet Nats at EAs this year. So if we get that back, I feel pretty comfortable with the team we have. We do have some up-and-comers that are running really well, like the Rain Gorman kid. I mean, he's just coming on strong, man. I mean, and he's going to start running these super stock and stock classes now and kind of getting away from the VTA stuff. But we have some up and coming kids that are pretty quick. And then we have a really good group of that next level, the guys that are fighting for the podium or, in the main spots. Like, I feel like we have a decent group of drivers, and some drivers move around, man. I mean, I've been around it long enough to know early on, I took it personal. I've gotten better with that just because I'm a little passionate too. And I've also been here for 22 years. So, I was heartbroken when we lost Xavier. Craig had been on the team a long time, and that was a tough one for me. And I mean, me and Craig were cool. It wasn't like we were best friends or anything, but we got along with each other at races, and it was a tough thing for us to lose him to go that way. But it was no different than, G was Awesomatics all-star for years, dude, when that company started out, and then went to Mugen and he came over. And I think all these guys, they kind of move around to a certain point, but FJ has done, they've done good, man. I mean, they have just 12 scale and touring car. The car seems to be a very unique design. They have from Max Meckler, guys that are involved with the company that definitely keep us on our toes at X-Ray. But I say this in the same sense, there's one thing about winning races, and there's another thing about selling product. And we might not, the hardest thing for us to learn, I tell guys all the time is, and we've gone through this before, and I hope we don't have to again. I feel like we've came out of it. But we've gone where we weren't winning a lot of races and still had to figure out how to sell product. And that's the toughest thing is knowing how to still be able to sell, but struggle to actually win. Because, I mean, Sam went on a tear for a few years, man, that he was just, he wasn't going to lose a race. And then they had guys like G, even when EA, that was tough for me too. EA was probably tougher than Craig for me because me and EA were super close. And when EA made the switch, that was a tough thing for me for sure. I'm sure it was tough on him, but, it made it very competitive. That company got super competitive, man, where they work just as hard as we do. That makes it tough. But at the end of the day, too, we've got to figure out how to continue to promote and sell things, even when we can't win the races. And I tell guys, that's the toughest thing in this industry. Being at this point, being a hobbyist and coming and enjoying, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Like guys all the time, all the say stuff like that to me, like it's a little different when it's your livelihood. Things are a little bit different. Like, oh, you take it so serious. It's like, well, I'm depending on this to pay my bills right now. Like I work for these companies, and so people they have a hard time. Like that's a small percentage of people in the hobby that are doing this, but there are a few of us that that work in this industry, and it's more than just a hobby. It's a way of a living, and things are taken. But I think this year that Chris Adams. I mean, you were there, Max. I mean, he dominated Superstock. I mean, I know it was at his track, and we could say all this stuff, but Chris puts in the work, and he was still able to drive the car and put in the win and flawless. So, Chris might pop up at a few races. Like he's coming to the Hootie Series this one at Apex, I think, to start preparing for nationals. We might use him a little bit more in super stock, depending on what we see, depending on what goes on with G and Robbie. We might maneuver guys around, and then I float back and forth. And I mean, I could still somewhat drive a car. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what they're our main focus right now. Is Awesomatics, has always been. FJ does a good job with the group of guys that he has. They're very loyal. Got a loyal group of racers over there. So, and they're competitive, and the car works well, the team works well with one another, and it makes it good, man. Like Ernie used to say back in the day, it takes two to tango. If there was no Reedy, there'd probably be no Trinity, right?
Yeah.
So it takes two of those companies to really push each other, and Awesomatics has done a fantastic job pushing us, and I hope the same for them, is that we've pushed them, and it's hard for that third company, at least in our market. It's hard for that third company to work their way up in that, right? Whether it's Schumacher or Mugen, because those would be the next two, you know, and it's very hard for them to get in and be assertive or dominate. It's Awesomatics and X-Ray kind of swallows that up to where, but it's always been like that. Like I don't ever remember a time that there was room for three of those companies to be at it. But yeah, I mean, I focus on it all the time, but their program, like I said, they've got good drivers. I mean, they've got Kemp, you know, and he's phenomenal. I mean, he's came up in these last 6 years or whatever he's been doing, and it's just over the top. And then Sam is just still on another level, man. I mean, he's just able to do what he's able to do, and he's a hard worker. So we go at it, and you know, things change. People move around. We've been lucky to have Kevin. I think his first race was in 19. So he's kind of stayed, and then we're also lucky that we could use, and same thing with Awesomatics. We could pull some of the Euros over here, you know, whether it's Jan to come over here and run some super stock, or Alex to come over and run some mod and stuff like that. Like we've been fortunate enough where Awesomatics has been doing that. Like they had Lucas at NYGP, and you know, I've seen Mark show up with Snowbirds before. So you know, it's cool having Mark on the team now too, to see that aspect of it all. You know,
he come over for races?
I don't know yet. It's so new. I think they're, you know, right now the whole X-Ray camp, as far as the European team, and the focus is the Worlds right now, right? They're resorting. So I think you're going to see Mark obviously doing a lot of asphalt. Like he was just this weekend in Italy doing the Hootie series running asphalt. So I think there's going to be a lot of prep. Same thing for Alex. A lot of prep now going into asphalt and going into November in Bangkok. So you know, I don't know if we will. I would definitely love to have Mark over, and X-Ray's been really good about you know, maneuvering these drivers around and things like that, to where we get to see a couple of those guys over here. I think it's really big for our market to have. I mean, you guys got, you know, when Martin and them all came and tested at Rose City before champs, you know, I mean, it's good to have that, for locals to have that, and for us to see these guys on the track in person. Like I remember the first time we brought Bruno over here, it was to an IIC, and I mean, everybody was out the track watching them. It's like we got to watch them on video at an ETS race or something like that, but to see it in person. So I think that's really cool with the companies to do that to help our market. So I would say, yeah, I think at some point we'll see Mark over here. I don't know what race. I mean, I know he's done Cleveland before. I know he's done Snowbirds. I know for sure Cleveland won't be because of the Worlds. The Worlds, I think, are the 9th through the 15th.
Yep.
So I don't think we'll see him at Cleveland this year, obviously. But, you know, maybe something like Snowbirds is possible, Can Nats, you know, something along those lines like that. It's an international race because they can't come to the Roar Nats, you know, obviously. So but I think it's possible. Yeah, but to answer your question, I mean, Awesomatics, FJ and his group, the team that he has done a really good job, and it made it difficult on my behalf to kind of keep some drivers. But it's also the same way. We've had some drivers, you know, come from their way. You know, Brandon Clements was a long time Awesomatics driver. You know, he made the jump and came and ran X-Ray for a little bit. So you know, I mean, obviously, if you're at the top of your game right now, you kind of fall into those two companies, right? To where you're trying to get in with those two companies. And, you know, right now for what we do on black carpet, those two brands seem to be, you know, at the top. I mean, you look at a lot of these races and it's those two brands in the top 10 and that's it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that's because the other brands don't have a racer. It's hard for me to say what it is, or they're not, you know, Mugen doesn't really compete in black carpet racing at all. And it's not to say Jacob Cruz couldn't show up and make a main at Snowbirds or a Nationals, you know what I'm saying? But it's just not something that he prepares for. It's not something that they have a feel for. It's not something that the car gets built around. So where, you have so much information from the two companies like Awesomatics and X-Ray that's all, Sam does asphalt racing, but 90% of it's black carpet racing that he does. So things get developed around that in that fashion. So, but they've done a good job. I mean, with what FJ's done, with how the company is. I mean, I know Max made the joke when he was on with you about, when you asked how many people work at Awesomatics, and he said something like, well, we have about what the graphic design department at X-Ray has.
Yeah.
So, but hey, I will say this, there was a point in time that X-Ray was like that also. So X-Ray started out very small, and we're able to build and reinvest everything that they did into the company. I mean, we also have 14 car lines. So we're just not, it's just not a 10 scale. I mean, we have anything that you could go race and win a world championship in, but besides fifth scale, we have a car that compete in the class. So, the company's definitely grown differently from the other companies and things like that. And it is a massive company. I mean, you guys have seen pictures of the facility. So, things like that. But I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, Awesomatics is our main competitor right now, but I pay attention to Schumacher. I pay attention to Mugen. You can see Schumacher has definitely picked up, tried to start really making a push in our market more so than they have. You've really seen it in off-road quite a bit, but we're starting to see it in on-road that they're going after guys. They're trying to sponsor more drivers, trying to get their cars out seen more. So I always kind of pay attention to that when we're at the races. I try to get around and do a count, to check to see where we are, where we fall in line, not just how many cars are in the main, but, how many guys who are here at this race. If there's, 150 racers, how many of them are running X-Ray cars? So I try to look at that, kind of keep an eye on that just to know where we're at or which way the industry is going with the business. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough, sometimes it could be a tough market and sometimes it could be fun. I mean, me and FJ have had our head bumpings. I mean, FJ's passionate about racing also. And I think he does a lot of what he does for the industry. It's not making a living off of it or anything, but, he does it for the enjoyment of the hobby and to kind of see things, or he does it purely because of the hate of X-Ray, one of the two. So whichever it is, I'm glad that he does it. I say it all the time. I don't care if you hate us, just show up and race. Yeah. Hate us all you want. Just show up and race is all I care about, dude. Pay your entry, get on the list, stand in line with us, and let's go at it. And, hate us, hate what we are, luxury that, optimize this. I don't care.
Traction this.
Yeah, car drives easier, whatever. We've said it all. So I don't, this is, and you know what, man, I'll say this too. And, a lot of guys used to make fun about our marketing scheme, right? And, X-Ray's always had a huge marketing scheme, very, very wordy, words that they use, luxury, like people, that was like a trigger for people. We started using the word luxury and people were just like, oh my God, what do you mean luxury? It's like, oh, because of the price. And it's like, no, man, when you build a kit, you're going to know. I was like, you just wore your Dremel battery out building your kit. And when you put all ours together, you're going to realize that you didn't use the Dremel at all and the car went together. That's the luxury part, right? But I will say this, man. We did a lot of promotional stuff and a lot of people busted our chops about this, right? But now you look at these other companies and you look at what they're doing. And they're doing the same thing that X-Ray started 10 something years ago. Like what Awesomatics has got, what's that, the Awesomatics track race thing now where they're doing pictures and doing all this stuff. Look, they're posting pictures of their drivers. They're doing graphics now. Like people used to laugh at us about doing race banners. Like we make a race banner of racers attending the race. And everybody's like laughing. But now look at all these other companies are doing the same thing now. So it's kind of like a thing that X-Ray, like we've talked about stuff being professional. Well, dude, don't hate a company because they're trying to be professional, because professional is what gets people's eyes on our hobby. What person that has money, you think some multi-billionaire looks at our industry and looks at a company that's not being professional? What do you think he thinks? Like, it's got to have a professional view from the very get-go. Even though we're all just a bunch of dudes having fun racing our toy cars, but for us to take it to this next level And there's people that, are focused on this. For us to take us to this next level, right? It's going to come down to that professionalism. And X-Ray was very keen on that for their marketing. But I'm telling you what, man, we caught gripes, every time we post something about a new car, someone comes on something about optimize or luxury, or, this, or I bet that part's $450 and, all this stuff. They say all this, but it's like, man, I don't know, dude. I got buddies that fish, and I can tell you fishing ain't cheap. All right. And you get your boat, your lures. I mean, whatever hobby you're going to do, you're going to spend some money into it. And so I look at that cost and I'm like, the cost isn't too bad. Depending on what you want to travel around and what you want to go do racing. But, X-Ray has always been that. And I've always told people that I feel that they've set that standard. Like you see other companies now, like I said, you see other companies doing these graphics now after they win 6 cars in the A main. And, here's some cool graphics of our drivers holding the cars, and people were wearing, like X-Ray was always big about shirts. Like they wanted everybody wearing shirts to look uniformed, and they didn't like the Americans making their own shirts. Well, mostly because most of us were all fat and the shirts didn't fit us. So at first we had to. Then X-Ray finally started making fat guy shirts that work for us now. But, it was stuff like that they were very, people used to be like, well, why are they like that? And it's like, well, dude, they, UPS drivers just don't get to pick what they wear to work. They're representing a company. They wear the US, it's baseball players go out in uniforms. When you see the St. Louis Cardinal logo, what that is. And so that's kind of their marketing scheme behind all that. And for me, that's part of the professionalism, but it has to be balanced. And I think it's the Americans were never like that. The old Associated and Losi guys, like, Mark, those dudes were just super cool, bro. Like, that's about it. They didn't really have to advertise anything or anything like this. They were just super cool dudes that you'd show up to the track and wanted to be around those dudes.
I told Max same thing. First time I ever met Joel Johnson or whatever, right? That wasn't an RC driver. You know what I mean? That guy was an athlete. Perfect hair.
Yeah, dude.
Ripped, everything else.
Top Gun F-14 pilot, dude.
Yes.
What he looked like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Shirt iron, pants iron, probably his underwear iron. Right?
Yeah, dude. But it was just one of us, though. At the end of the day, you hang out with them. And,
Cleveland, you'd see him come out of the hotel room, TQ, and then never see him again. Come down for his race, lean against the wall. They hand him his Dieter, and then would put down his car.
A little bump box out there, and he'd be good to go.
TQ and win and back to his room.
Dude, when I remember Phantom back in the day, like Troy and them dudes.
Yep.
Troy and Jeff built a phenomenal company. I mean, they were good at what they did, but their image, like people wanted to race with Phantom.
Yeah.
It was just like that was the image of it, the stickers, the logos. Those things were a big part of that business. And same thing for Trinity. Trinity was the same thing. Like everybody wanted to run for Trinity back in the day. And
but before I let you go, the Troy story was the best. He came to one of my first races I ever held, and I held this race in this dumpy bar restaurant that had a hall beside it. It was all joined together. This guy loved us because, you know what I mean? All these people came to his restaurant type thing. Well, wasn't there a band that night, right? And what's that song, Devil in the Hen, whatever? Devil Went Down to Georgia. They're singing that. The bar is packed. First, you got 80, 90 racers in there, plus whatever this bar, restaurant holds, right? And the RC shit's right next door, right? Troy jumps on the stage, grabs the mic from the singer, and sings the song. And even when it says peck in that door, he pecked across the stage like a chicken. The place went ballistic, nuts.
Yeah.
It was, and that's the attitude. And everybody loved that guy. Every Canadian's like,
oh, dude, he was a blast, dude.
What RC owner would be on the stage with a cover band singing and dancing? And he was an amazing singer. I'm not kidding. He was an amazing singer, bro.
Their image, bro. I mean, their image. Troy was decent at building motors. He was decent, but he was just one of those cool dudes to be around, dude. That was just super cool to be around. He was a cool, laid-back team, company. And that's, I was able to learn a lot from those guys and kind of take it in and take the bits and pieces from these companies back in the day and the things that I saw in the industry and try to roll that into RC America. Because, I've been, I know you guys got it going. I was at RC America in 2004, and that's when we made the announcement that RC America was going to be the X-Ray distributor.
Okay. So
I've been there since the beginning of that. So, and we come from some of that background, racing from Phantom. And I remember when we did these shirts, the first shirts that were RC America shirts, and there were hoodies that said factory team on the sleeve. Mm-hmm. And we didn't sell those. So like you had to be on the factory team to get those, dude. And I'm telling you, man, I didn't go to a race for 2 years where people were like, I want one of those hoodies, bro.
Because they wanted them. Yeah.
They wanted it so bad. It was like just that thing. It's like, well, dude, you know, there's only one way to get one, and is to get on the factory team, you know? So, you know, it's just things like that, a lot of the imagery, but there's companies that did really good in that. But yeah, man, I think we're in a good spot, man. I know you guys, there's always a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, club racing, locally. Everybody thinks they have the fix of what we need to do. And I'm gonna say this, and we can end it on this. The fix is come race. That's the fix. Bottom line. Don't worry about the classes, the bodies. Just come race.
Yeah.
And that's what we need first and foremost. Because the more people we get racing, the more that this will happen. The reason we're in the point that we are is because we're coming out of that tail end of really losing, right? Race turnouts, racers. And we're coming out of that. We've already been at this deep part. We're coming up the hill now. We're coming out of it. So the biggest thing right now is we don't want to aggressively change too many things too quick, right? We want to listen to what everybody's going on. Like Roar listened about the LMH class, things like this. But you know, we want to, because you know now I'm wearing all kinds of hats, man. I'm a racer. I'm the team manager. I'm on the Roar on-road committee. I mean, I'm the Region 8 team director I'm doing all this stuff kind of behind the scenes in the industry. And our goal is to hopefully start getting more turnouts, right? Getting more people at more races and helping other tracks and trying to stay to grow the pie. Cause that's what we really need to do, man. Everybody from my biggest competitor to whatever is at some point, we all got to come together to figure out how to grow the pie instead of fighting over each other's piece. And for a while in on-road, that's what was happening, was we were fighting over each other's piece and we weren't focusing on the size of the pie. And when we get to that point, it's basically a race to the bottom, right? Because what then happens, the easiest way to sell product is try to lower the price, right? If I sell it cheaper than you, but guess what? We're going to get down to a point where none of us are making any money. And once that happens, you're done. Mm-hmm. So, you know, right now we really need to focus on how do we grow this pie? How do we get more people involved and not be so worried about fighting over the piece and trying to, you know, take this or take that? How can we grow the hobby? And I think the biggest thing is that we really got to promote getting out to race, whether it's club racing, big racing, whatever it is, man. Get out to your track, try the things out, talk to guys. There's plenty of guys in this hobby that are really good about letting you try stuff. You know, all those things kind of coexist, and that's what we really need to focus on. I mean, the arguing's always going to be here, right? Yeah. The opinions are always going to be there. Everyone's going to have their own opinion of what they think that needs to be done. But the bottom line is it doesn't matter what we do, what we change. We got to get out and race, dude. I mean, we could change the bodies and I'll go to LMH bodies all the way across the class, but people don't come out and race. It doesn't matter. So the main focus is let's get these people on. And that's the only thing that I think having the multiple classes that we have right now on road is that allows this, right? If a guy runs LMH really good and he wants to travel to a big race, right now he could travel to a big race and run LMH. Or he could run stock touring car. Or he could run super, you know. We have these classes to where people like Too Short said, get in where you fit in, you know, and you could do this. But the main thing we need to focus on is getting these people out to the track. Because you guys have said, and I've said, once you come, dude, you're bit, bro. Like once you come to like a Snowbirds or a Can Nats or Cleveland or a Roar Nationals, and you get in that environment, like you're bit. Like you're like, well, when's the next one, dude? And everyone's gone through that. I mean, that was the very thing I said after I went to my first nationals. I was like, when's the next one? They're like, well, carpet season's done, Drew. Like, you know, I was like, what do you mean it's done? Well, I'm like, what do we do? And they're like, oh, well, we go outside in the Midwest in the summertime. You go outside and race nitro.
Okay.
So, but that's the main thing, man. I think that's what we've got to stay strong and supporting is that we need guys to get out and race, and we need to be doing whatever we can do to accommodate that. To get people out as much as we can, you know, like Paul says, you're not going to make everyone happy, right? But it's kind of let's figure out how we could all just get along. Like we might not be totally happy, but we're efficient and the hobby's growing. Because as the hobby grows, as that pie grows, things are going to get better for everybody, right? It's just not going to be, one side or the other. As the racing grows, it's going to get better for tracks. Tracks are going to start making more money. Manufacturers are going to start making more money. And most of the manufacturers that are involved in the industry right now, they start making more money. They're putting it back in the industry, So once we start getting that money flow of more around, then we could worry about all this other stuff. But until we get to that point, we're all just going to be arguing with each other on who thinks has the right idea to do this and do that. But what I'm seeing, and I know this because I'm going to the races are growing. So, the races, Cleveland's gotten bigger. The Nationals have gotten bigger. These races have gotten bigger in that sense than what we've seen in the past. I mean, the Hootie Indoor Champs has grown the last few years.
Yeah.
Halloween Classic, these races are all starting to see these new groups coming back to where they're back to where they were. So, I mean, for me, that's a sign to say that we're doing something right, that we're on this path. So we just need to keep pushing that. I think that's the biggest thing. The rest of the stuff is, for us to kind of argue over, and, guys are flipping out about this Avalon body. And, people are just losing their, I'm like, the body, oh my God, the body's so ugly. It's like, well, me as a racer, I don't care what it looks like. If I go faster with it, it don't matter. Right. But right now that body it does meet, just to clear up stuff on it. I don't know if EA did or not, but that body does meet all Roar specs. The thing that was talked about is the wing. So Roar still has the wing and roof height. If you run the stock wing that comes with the Avalon, it meets the requirement. You have to trim it down a little bit, but it will meet it. But a lot of these guys you see over at ETS were running, I know the X-Ray guys were running the OG wing. Well, you run the OG wing, you don't trim it down, it's way above the roof. But EFRA doesn't have that rule anymore. So they don't have a rule about where the wing is, but with us, we still have that rule. So, you can still run the body over here. And I think Roar's going to be having a meeting on it. They just want to confirm some things, availability and things like this before we just put it on the list. But as far as the measurements of the body, it met all the requirements as far as what we did. Now, you just have, the wing is not a measurement that we do per se to make a body legal. It's what has to be done at the race and checked. So, but I've heard some guys have tried running it over here. It just doesn't seem carpet. Doesn't seem to be too aspect on carpet. I mean, none of the guys ran it in spec at ETS. You saw them guys all stay on the Wolverine. But while I heard in modified, it was like a must have. Like our team guys were saying that it was 3 to 4 seconds and 5 minutes faster. Crazy. Super hard to drive. It was very twitchy, a little pushy kind of feeling. But, everybody's flipping out about everyone's flipping out about the look of it. And it's been long, 2.5 hours, dude, man. Jesus.
You're welcome, Ronnie. You're welcome.
Yeah, man. You guys could listen to this tomorrow while you guys are all at work.
Yep.
Get it all in, dude. I'll never be. I did such a good job that I'll probably never be asked back to come on this thing. Dude.
We got no more questions left.
That's right. I covered it all, dude. I covered it all. I even asked questions myself and answered them. So, but no, hey, at the end of, you guys, thank you for doing this. You guys are doing
thank you for coming on.
Very good job. I'm super supportive. And I've asked our whole team. I don't know if you've seen Alex share a couple things where he's watching the deals, working on his cars. So we've really been trying to get behind you guys on this because I do think it's something. I mean, in on-road in general, I think on-road in Europe, they have some stuff like this, right? Like RCTV, they all kind of do. But in our market, in this North American market, we really don't have this outlet, right? Of racers running a podcast, and especially you guys are in, getting the groups of guys you had. I mean, you look, Paul Lemieux, I don't think he's ever done a podcast before. So, I mean, you guys had him, Kevin, EA. I mean, you guys came out the boat with some people that are, in the industry, Sam. So I think this is phenomenal, what you guys are doing. And I think it's only going to grow. And I hope you guys, like I said, whatever we could do, I did get the email from you, Max. I'm going to try to look in to see what we could do to get behind you guys and support it. And like I said, anytime you guys need a filler, you get a canceled guest, call me up, man. I don't have a problem talking for 3 hours, about whatever, dude. I mean, we could talk about syrup. We could talk about Canada and America, whatever you guys want to talk about. We're all starting to merge. I heard you guys are getting Chipotle's and we're getting Tim Hortons. So we're starting to become one country here in a minute, dude. It's happening, dude. It's happening. So
yeah, you guys are gonna be called Canada. Don't worry.
Yeah, I don't care what you call us, dude. You know what? As long as we could ship into your guys' country without it, like it's not. I feel like every time I ship into Canada, you guys are not connected to us or something. It's like they act like you're not just right here. Like it's different. Like all of a sudden, I could ship to New York in 2 days, but it takes 12 days to get into Canada. It makes no sense.
With a massive bill to follow.
Yeah, but I'm all for that. So whatever I could do to help you guys, like if you need me to come on again and you're running out of things, like I'm open to you guys anytime, man.
Thank you.
Anytime you need me to do something as far as come on here, and then I'm going to look behind the scenes what we could do to really support you guys, because like I said, I think this type of podcast, right? Because I've listened to all of them. There's a lot of information that comes on here. Getting guys that don't come to big races can get to know me. They can get to know Sam. They can get to know these drivers at a different level of what they just see when they see the videos, right? So this is also good for the hobby to grow, for the big races to grow, for people to learn to get information. So I'm all about this, man. Like I said, if I had more time, I would have tried to start it a while ago myself, but I just don't have the time right now with everything else. But anytime you guys need me to come on here to fill in for somebody, if somebody cancels, or you want to have me on here again for part 2 for another 3-hour conversation, I'm all good for it. So, but
awesome.
Thank you guys both for sure, man. Like I said, thanks for
lots in the works.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, man. I think you guys will, man. I think as you guys, I really appreciate you guys staying with like the North American guys too, man. I know we'll probably get more European guys on like Max, but I think it's really important to promote our market. Not just the overall hobby. I think it's good also, but I think it's also to promote our market that we're in, right? We're all in this North American market, and we want to see this racing grow. So I think that's a big deal. So like I said, whatever I could do, man, thank you guys for doing what you're doing. And
thank you.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. We'll have some things, we've been traveling a lot to the races, so we have some ideas for when we're actually at the races too, to give some insight to what happens there. Talk to everybody there. So we have ideas for races, and then we're working on a setup thing on the side. So
yeah,
trying to make it bigger than what it is.
The thing at races could probably be big. Like even if you plan one or something like you want to do. I don't know if you guys are planning on coming to Champs this year, but if you want to come to Champs, you want to plan on doing a podcast at Champs. Something like live podcast at Champs. Just let me know, man. I'll make sure to line up the guys you want. If Kevin, me, whoever else that we get to come over for it, and make sure. But there's plenty of things that you guys could do. And like I said, I've listened to them all. We listened to Paulie's one driving home from the Hootie series down in Texas. We listened to it in the car driving home. So, I've been listening to them all, man. I think there's some really great insight on that stuff. So, I think it's a good deal to do that stuff and continue. And whatever I could do to help, I'm on board for that for sure. So I think it's awesome, man. Like I said, I don't normally listen to podcasts, but you guys have done a great job. I still think we need to have a drinking game, though. I text Max, Mark, because you kept saying right. So then I'm like, all right, let's put in a right count to every time Mark says right, you've got a drink.
Nice.
And so this time maybe you only got like 10 rights out because I've been talking the whole time. But with Paulie, there was like 50 of them. We would all
hammered.
Yeah, it would have been ruined.
Beautiful.
But yeah, no, dude, they're really good. I think they're awesome. So I think you guys have jumped in at the right time to give the industry something that it needed. And I'm thankful for that, for being where I'm at, involved in the industry. I'm thankful for that you guys are putting your time together to do this on top of, being a part of Rose City, doing the can nats, all this other stuff for the industry, traveling to the races, being a part of it all. But this right here is this is what we were lacking, I believe, in our industry, in this market, a podcast that's solely about on-road racing. And was scattered in a little bit here and there with off road, but mainly the on road portions of it, I think is great.
Yeah, the real racing. But
Yep.
Well, Drew, thank you very much, man. It's been a pleasure. We'll definitely have you back on for sure. So much good information shared.
Thanks, Drew.
Awesome, man. You guys have a good night, dude. All right.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
See ya.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
See you, boys. Thank you,
All right.
guys.
See you guys.
Well, Mark, thank you very much, man. That was a great show. Ton of information. Drew brought up that, the 04, 06 era. Not a lot of people know about that. The insight from a team manager. It was a great show. We'll definitely have Drew back on. We're off next week. Give us a little bit of a break because we've gone 7 weeks straight. And, we got some people we got to take care of on Monday nights. But we got a couple of guests coming afterwards, so it'll be a great time. Thank you, everyone, for the 2.5 hours. It's been a pleasure. Mark, thank you, my friend. Go get some rest.
Thank you, Maxie. All right, buddy.
All right, guys.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Talk to you.